Hello, beautiful people. You've just landed on Harry FLAX. Today's featured story is what if Dr. Strange found Harry in cupboard at age 7 and trained him as Sorcerer Supreme with both wand and mystic arts. If you're new here, welcome to the family. Hit subscribe and the notification bell. And if you're returning, you know the drill, like and share. Enough talk, let's get into the story. Chapter 1. The boy in the cupboard. Stephen Strange frowned at the swirling magical energy displayed in the air before him. The complex pattern of golden light pulsed irregularly, like a heartbeat with an arrhythmia. For 3 nights, he detected this anomaly from the New York Sanctum, a peculiar magical signature emanating from somewhere in England. "Wong," he called, eyes never leaving the display. "Are you seeing this?" Wong stepped into the chamber, a dusty tome tucked under his arm. "The Surrey anomaly again? It's growing stronger. Not just stronger. Look at the pattern." Strange gestured, fingers tracing the swirling light. "It's responding to something. Emotional triggers, perhaps." Wong set his book down on a nearby pedestal. "Could be accidental magic. The British wizarding community has their own ways. No, this is different." Strange's cloak shifted around his shoulders as if agreeing with him. "Their magic has a different signature. This is hybrid. Raw potential touching something else. Something older." "You're not suggesting, I don't know what I'm suggesting," Strange admitted, closing his fist and dissolving the display. "But I'm going to find out." Wong raised an eyebrow. The Ancient One advised against interfering with wand wielders. They have their own protections, their own system. "I'm not interfering," Strange replied, already opening a portal with circular motions of his hands. The familiar orange sparks formed a ring, revealing a glimpse of night-darkened suburbia beyond. "I'm investigating." "There's a difference." "There rarely is with you," Wong muttered, but Strange was already stepping through. The portal closed behind him, leaving Strange standing on the eerily identical street of Privet Drive. Identical houses lined both sides, with identical cars and identical gardens. The mundanity was almost offensive to someone who had glimpsed other dimensions. Strange held out his hand, summoning a small tracking spell that glowed green in his palm. The spell tugged him forward, down the street toward number 4. As he approached, the magical signature grew stronger, wild, untrained, but incredibly potent. Something wasn't right. Magic this powerful should be monitored, guided. The British wizards were usually fastidious about that, if nothing else. Why was this signature so raw, so reactive? He stopped at the edge of the property, sensing protective wards. Blood wards, if he wasn't mistaken, old magic, powerful in its way, but narrowly focused. He slipped through them with barely a ripple, his mystical training allowing him to pass undetected. Following the signature, Strange expected to be led to a bedroom, perhaps a child practicing magic in secret. Instead, the trail led him to a cupboard under the stairs. A soft whimper from inside confirmed someone was there. Strange knelt down, pressing his hand against the small door. He could feel fear radiating from inside, fear and something else. Resignation. The kind that comes from long experience. "Hello," he called softly. "Is someone in there?" The whimpering stopped. Silence. Strange tried again. "I'm not going to hurt you. My name is Dr. Strange. I'm a friend." A small voice finally answered, uncertain and muffled. "Are you one of Uncle Vernon's friends? He doesn't like people talking to me." "No, I'm not his friend." "May I open the door?" After a pause, "It's locked from outside." Strange's jaw tightened. With a small gesture, the lock clicked open. He pulled the door carefully, revealing a tiny space barely larger than a closet. Inside, a small boy with unruly black hair sat huddled on a thin mattress. He wore pajamas several sizes too large, and round glasses held together with tape perched on his nose. But what caught Strange's attention was the boy's eyes, brilliant green, wary, yet somehow still holding a spark of curiosity. And on his forehead, partially hidden by his hair, was a scar shaped like a lightning bolt. The boy was skinny, too skinny, his face bearing the gauntness of someone who hadn't been fed properly. Dark bruises peeked from beneath his oversized sleeve. "Hello," said Strange, keeping his voice gentle. "What's your name?" The boy hesitated. "Harry. Harry Potter." Strange froze. Even he, with his limited knowledge of the wand-wielder's world, knew that name. Harry Potter. The boy who lived. The child who had somehow defeated one of the darkest wizards in history as an infant, left with nothing but a lightning scar. And here he was, locked in a cupboard, bearing signs of neglect and abuse. "Are you really a doctor?" Harry asked, breaking Strange's stunned silence. "I was. Now I'm something different." Strange composed himself. "Harry, do you know what you are?" The boy's face fell. "A freak. That's what Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia say." Something cold settled in Strange's stomach. "You're not a freak, Harry. You're a wizard." Harry's eyes widened. "I'm a what?" "A wizard. Someone who can do magic." Strange held out his hand, palm up, and summoned a small butterfly made of light. It fluttered around his fingers before flying toward Harry, who watched in wonder. "I can do strange things sometimes," Harry whispered, reaching out as the butterfly landed on his finger. "When I'm scared or angry. Once I ended up on the school roof. Another time, my hair grew back overnight after Aunt Petunia cut it all off." "That's accidental magic," Strange explained. "All young wizards do it. But Harry, you're special, even among wizards. Do you know about your parents?" Harry shook his head. "Just that they died in a car crash. That's how I got this." He pushed his hair back, revealing the scar fully. Strange's eyes narrowed. They hadn't even told the boy the truth about his parents. About his own history. A sound from upstairs, heavy footsteps, interrupted them. Harry tensed, fear flashing across his face. "That's Uncle Vernon," he whispered urgently. "You should go. He gets angry when what, Harry?" "When anything strange happens." The boy shrunk back into his cupboard. "Please go. I'll be okay." Strange made a decision then, one that would alter the course of multiple worlds. "Harry, would you like to leave this place? Come with me." Harry stared at him, suspicious yet hopeful. "Where?" "Somewhere you'll be safe. Somewhere you can learn about who you really are, about your parents, about magic." The footsteps grew louder. A door opened upstairs. "Boy!" A man's voice bellowed. "What's that noise? Are you talking to yourself again?" Harry's eyes darted toward the stairs, then back to Strange. "You're not lying." Strange held out his hand. "I promise." After a heartbeat of hesitation, Harry took it. Moving quickly, Strange gathered Harry's meager possessions, a few broken toys, some overlarge clothes, and stuffed them into a plastic grocery bag. As Vernon Dursley's heavy footsteps reached the top of the stairs, Strange opened a portal right there in the hallway. Vernon's face appeared on the stairs, his expression morphing from anger to shock at the sight of the glowing orange ring floating in his hallway. "What the devil, goodbye, Mr. Dursley," Strange said coolly. "Your guardianship has been found wanting." He stepped through the portal with Harry, closing it behind them just as Vernon's bellow of rage reached its peak. They emerged into the New York Sanctum's main hall. Harry stumbled, gaping at the sudden shift in surroundings, from a cramped suburban house to a vast, ornate room filled with artifacts and pulsing with magical energy. "Where are we?" he breathed, turning in a slow circle. 177A, Bleecker Street, New York City, Strange replied. "But more importantly, this is the New York Sanctum. One of 3 that help protect Earth from mystical threats." "New York? But that's..." Harry's eyes widened further. In America? Indeed. Strange gestured, and a nearby chair slid across the floor toward them. Sit, Harry. There's much to explain. Wong appeared in a doorway, his usual stoic expression giving way to surprise at the sight of the small boy. Strange, you didn't. I did, Strange confirmed. Wong, meet Harry Potter. Wong's eyebrows shot up. The Harry Potter? The British wizarding child who, yes, that one. Strange cut him off with a meaningful glance at Harry, who was looking between them in confusion. The Sorcerer Supreme isn't a babysitter, Wong said, but his eyes softened as he took in Harry's condition. I found him locked in a cupboard, Wong. Showing signs of long-term abuse and neglect. The wards were there, but whoever was supposed to be monitoring them clearly wasn't doing their job. Wong sighed. The Ancient One would have done the same, Strange finished firmly. You know she would have. After a moment, Wong nodded. The British wizards will look for him. Especially Dumbledore. Let them. Strange turned to Harry, who was sitting rigidly in the chair, clearly trying to make himself as small as possible. Harry, are you hungry? Harry hesitated, then nodded slightly. Wong makes excellent sandwiches, Strange said. Would you like one? Another small nod. Wong gave Strange a look that promised future discussion but headed toward the kitchen. Strange sat in a chair opposite Harry, who was now looking around the room with cautious curiosity. You have questions, Strange said. Harry nodded. Lots. Ask them. I'll answer what I can. Are you really a wizard too? Strange smiled slightly. Not exactly. I'm what's called a master of the mystic arts. The magic I practice is different from yours, though not entirely separate. I don't understand. Think of it this way, wand wielders like you are born with an innate connection to magical energy. Your magic comes from within. What I do involves channeling energy from other dimensions, shaping reality through knowledge and discipline rather than innate power. Harry's brow furrowed. But you said I'm a wizard. You are. You were born to magical parents, powerful ones. But I sense something else in you too, Harry. A potential to understand and channel mystical energies in a way most wand wielders cannot. My parents were magical. Harry perked up. Not drunks who died in a car crash. Strange's expression darkened. No, Harry. Your parents were James and Lily Potter, respected members of magical Britain. They were murdered protecting you from a dark wizard called Voldemort. Harry went very still. Murdered? Yes. And somehow, when Voldemort tried to kill you too, his curse rebounded. You survived with only that scar, and he was defeated. That's why you're famous in the wizarding world, you're the boy who lived. Harry touched his scar gingerly. That's what this is. From a curse? Yes. And it's part of what I sensed from New York. There's powerful magic in that mark, Harry. Not all of it good. Wong returned with a plate bearing a sandwich, apple slices, and a glass of milk. He set it before Harry, who looked at it uncertainly. Go ahead, Strange encouraged. It's for you. Harry took a small bite, then, seemingly reassured it wasn't a trick, began eating with the careful efficiency of someone accustomed to having food taken away. There's more when you're done, Wong said gently, noting Harry's pace. Harry's eyes widened, but he slowed down slightly. Why did someone put me with my aunt and uncle if I'm famous? He asked between bites. Strange exchanged a look with Wong. That's a complicated question. I believe Albus Dumbledore, the headmaster of Hogwarts, the magical school in Britain, placed you there for protection. The blood connection to your mother created wards that kept dark wizards away. But not from Uncle Vernon, Harry said quietly. No, Strange agreed, something cold in his voice. Not from within. That was an oversight I don't believe Dumbledore considered. Or perhaps he did, and decided it was an acceptable risk. Strange, Wong cautioned. He needs to know, Wong. Strange leaned forward. Harry, there are people who had plans for you. Good people, mostly, but with their own agendas. Dumbledore is one of them. He likely intended for you to attend Hogwarts when you turned 11, to be trained as a wizard in the British tradition. And now? Now you have a choice. Or you will, once you understand what those choices are. Harry set down his sandwich. Will you send me back? No, Strange said firmly. Not to the Dursleys. Never there. Relief washed over Harry's face. But there are other options, Strange continued. I could help find you a proper wizarding family in Britain. Or. Harry prompted when Strange paused. Or you could stay here. With me. Learn both traditions, wand magic and the mystic arts. It won't be easy. The training I underwent was rigorous, and I was an adult with years of disciplined study behind me. But you think I could do it? Strange nodded. I do. Your magical core is remarkably strong, and there's something in your aura that suggests an affinity for the dimensional energies we work with. Harry was quiet for a moment, finishing his sandwich and milk as he thought. Finally, he looked up with those startling green eyes. I want to stay, he said. I want to learn everything. Strange smiled. We'll start tomorrow. For now, you need rest. Wong will show you to a room, a proper room, with a bed and space for your things. My things are just. Harry gestured at the plastic bag. We'll get you more, Strange promised. Clothes that fit. Books. Whatever you need. Harry stood, then hesitated. Dr. Strange. Thank you for taking me away from there. Strange nodded. It was the right thing to do. As Wong led Harry upstairs, Strange moved to a window overlooking the street. He wasn't naive, removing Harry Potter from his designated guardians would have consequences. The wards at Privet Drive would have alerted someone the moment Harry left their protection. It wouldn't be long before Albus Dumbledore came looking for his missing chess piece. Strange was counting on it. The next morning, Harry woke disoriented. The room around him was too big, the bed too soft. It took several seconds to remember where he was, the Sanctum, with Dr. Strange. Away from the Dursleys. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating walls lined with bookshelves and strange artifacts. His new room, Strange had explained, could reshape itself somewhat to match his needs and preferences. Currently, it seemed to have settled on a cross between a student's dormitory and a junior wizard's study. Harry climbed out of bed, marveling at the actual pajamas Wong had found for him last night, soft, blue ones that actually fit. On a chair nearby lay clothes, jeans, a t-shirt, a hoodie, socks, and sneakers. All new, all his size. After dressing, Harry cautiously opened his door and peered into the hallway. The Sanctum was enormous, with corridors that seemed to bend in impossible ways and staircases that led to unexpected places. Good morning, Harry. He jumped, turning to find Wong standing behind him. The Sanctum takes some getting used to, Wong said. It exists partially between dimensions, which means space works differently here. Like in Doctor Who? Harry asked. Bigger on the inside? Wong's lips twitched. Something like that. Breakfast is downstairs. Can you find your way, or shall I guide you? I'll try, Harry said, determined to learn. Wong nodded approvingly. First left, second right, down the grand staircase. If you see the room of infinite shelving, you've gone too far. Following Wong's directions, Harry found himself in a comfortable kitchen where Strange sat at a table, reading a book that hovered in the air before him, pages turning without being touched. Ah, Harry. Sleep well? Strange asked, the book gently closing itself and settling on the table. Yes, sir. Better than ever. Just, Strange, is fine. Or, Stephen, if you prefer. I've never been much for formality. Harry nodded, taking a seat at the table where a plate of eggs, toast, and fruit waited. He started eating, still marveling at being allowed a full meal. Today, Strange said, we begin your education. But first, we need to address a more immediate concern, your scar. Harry's hand moved unconsciously to his forehead. What about it? It contains foreign magic. Dark magic. I'd like to examine it more closely, with your permission. Harry hesitated, then nodded. Strange moved to Harry's side of the table. This won't hurt, but it might feel strange. Hold still. He placed his fingertips near Harry's scar, not quite touching it. Golden symbols appeared in the air around his hands as he murmured words in a language Harry didn't recognize. The scar tingled, then burned slightly. Strange's expression grew troubled as he worked, the symbols shifting from gold to red around his hands. What is it? Harry asked. Something I feared. Strange lowered his hands, the symbols fading. Your scar contains a fragment of foreign consciousness, a splinter of Voldemort himself, left behind when his killing curse rebounded. Harry felt sick. You mean, he's inside my head? Not exactly. It's more like an echo, a remnant. But it shouldn't be there, and it's been feeding on your magic, creating a connection that could become dangerous as you grow stronger. Can you remove it? Strange nodded slowly. I believe so. The British wizards might struggle with this, soul magic is considered dark in their tradition. But the mystic arts offer certain alternatives. Will it hurt? Some, Strange admitted. But leaving it would hurt more in the long run. It needs to be done before we begin your magical education in earnest. Harry squared his shoulders. Then let's do it. Strange studied him. Brave. But we should prepare first. The procedure will require assistance. As if on cue, Wong entered the kitchen. I've contacted her. She's on her way. Contacted who? Harry asked. An old friend, Strange replied. Someone with expertise in this particular area. An hour later, Harry sat cross-legged in the center of the Sanctum's main chamber. Strange had drawn complex symbols around him in what looked like luminescent sand. Candles burned at specific points around the circle, their flames occasionally shifting color from yellow to blue to green. Wong stood at a specific point outside the circle, hands ready to maintain the barriers Strange was creating. A portal opened on the far side of the room, and a woman stepped through, dark-skinned, with striking white hair and an aura of power that Harry could almost see. Stephen, she greeted. When Wong said it was urgent, I didn't expect this. Her eyes fell on Harry, widening slightly. Is that, Harry Potter? Strange confirmed. Harry, this is Aurora Monroe, also known as Storm. She's not a sorceress, but her mutant abilities give her a unique sensitivity to energies that will help us today. Hello, Harry said shyly. Storm smiled warmly. Hello, Harry. She turned to Strange. What exactly are we doing here, Stephen? Removing a soul fragment, Strange said grimly. From his scar. Storm's expression hardened. Show me. Strange quickly explained the situation while Storm examined Harry's scar with gentle fingers. Her eyes clouded over, becoming completely white as she channeled her powers. I feel it, she confirmed. Malevolent. Old. Clinging. Can you help channel it away while I separate it? Strange asked. Storm nodded. The electrical pathways of the brain I can navigate. The soul, that's your domain. But I can help stabilize him during the process. They positioned themselves around Harry, Strange directly in front, Storm behind with her hands hovering near Harry's temples, and Wong maintaining the circle's integrity. Ready, Harry? Strange asked. Harry nodded, though his heart was pounding. Ready. Strange began to move his hands in complex patterns. Golden light formed around his fingers, weaving into an intricate web that slowly approached Harry's scar. As it touched the lightning bolt mark, the light turned green, then black at the edges. Harry felt it immediately, a burning, tearing sensation. Something inside the scar was fighting back, resisting Strange's magic. Pain lanced through his head. "Hold steady," Strange murmured, concentration etched on his face. "The fragment is more integrated than I expected." Storm's hands glowed with controlled electrical energy, sending soothing pulses into Harry's nervous system, dulling the pain without interfering with Strange's work. "There's a structure to it," she said. "Not random. It's purposeful." Strange's eyes narrowed. "You're right. This wasn't an accident." His movements became more aggressive, the golden light pushing deeper. Harry gritted his teeth as the pain intensified. It felt like something was being slowly peeled away from the inside of his skull. Through watering eyes, he saw Strange pull his hands back slightly, drawing with them a dark, oily substance that clung to the golden light like tar. "That's it," Strange said tightly. "Wong, the containment vessel." Wong slid a small ornate box into the circle. Strange directed the dark substance toward it, fighting its resistance every inch of the way. As the last tendrils of darkness were extracted from Harry's scar, the pain peaked. Harry couldn't help it, he screamed, his back arching. Storm held him steady, her own energy forming a protective cocoon around his mind. With a final gesture, Strange sealed the dark essence into the box. Wong immediately performed a series of movements that covered the box in glowing symbols before it locked itself with an audible click. The pain in Harry's head vanished so abruptly he gasped. The room seemed suddenly brighter, the colors more vivid. He felt lighter, as if he'd been carrying a weight he hadn't even known was there. "How do you feel?" Strange asked, kneeling before him. "Different," Harry breathed. "Good different. Like I can think more clearly." Storm smiled, her eyes returning to normal. "Your aura is cleaner now. Brighter." Strange helped Harry to his feet. The boy was unsteady for a moment, then straightened with new energy. "What will happen to it?" Harry asked, eyeing the box. "It will be secured in a dimensional pocket where it can do no harm," Strange said. "Eventually, it will dissipate without a host to feed on." Was it really part of Voldemort? Strange exchanged glances with Storm and Wong. "Yes. And I'm increasingly convinced it was no accident. I believe Voldemort created multiple such fragments deliberately, a way to anchor himself to this plane even if his body was destroyed." "Which means he's not truly gone," Wong added gravely. "No," Strange agreed. "But he's no longer connected to you, Harry. And that gives us time to train you, to prepare you for whatever may come." Harry touched his scar, feeling only a normal ridge of skin now. "When do we start?" Strange smiled. "We already have." In the weeks that followed, Harry's life transformed completely. The Sanctum became his home, its mystical corridors and chambers his playground and classroom. Strange established a routine that balanced normal childhood activities with increasingly complex magical education. Mornings began with physical training, yoga and basic martial arts, followed by academic studies in math, science, and literature. Wong, it turned out, had been a teacher before becoming a master of the mystic arts, and he approached Harry's conventional education with the same seriousness he gave to mystical matters. "The mind must be disciplined before the magic," he explained when Harry complained about algebra. "All knowledge is connected." Afternoons were devoted to magical theory and practice. Strange started with the fundamentals, meditation, energy sensing, and the basic principles that united all magical traditions. "Close your eyes," Strange instructed during one such session. They sat cross-legged in the mirror dimension, where Harry's practice couldn't accidentally damage the real world. "Feel the energy around you. Not just inside you, where your wizard's core resides, but all around, the dimensional energies that flow between worlds. Harry concentrated, eyes shut tight. At first, he felt nothing but frustration. Then slowly, like tuning a radio, he began to sense it, currents of power flowing through and around him, different from the warm pulse of his own magical core. "I feel it," he exclaimed. Like rivers of light, but I'm feeling them instead of seeing them." "Good," Strange said approvingly. "Now, reach out with your mind. Don't try to control the energy yet, just touch it." Harry extended his awareness, brushing against the flow. To his surprise, the energy responded, swirling toward him like water curling around a stone in a stream. "It likes me," he said, surprised. "Energy responds to intention and will," Strange explained. "Your magical core acts as a natural conduit. That's unusual, most beginners take months to establish that initial connection." Harry opened his eyes to find tendrils of golden light actually visible around his hands. "Is that good?" "It's different," Strange said carefully. "Your wizard's magic and the mystical energies are integrating in a way I've not seen before. It's neither better nor worse, just different. We'll need to adapt your training accordingly." Meanwhile, Strange had also introduced Harry to wand magic, not wanting him to fall behind his future classmates at Hogwarts. While Harry wouldn't get his own wand until he turned 11, wand makers were strict about that tradition. Strange had procured training wands that allowed basic spellwork. "The movements are precise for a reason," Strange explained, demonstrating a levitation charm. "Wand magic channels your internal core through specific patterns that shape the effect. Different from mystic arts gestures, which open dimensional gateways, but similar in concept." Harry practiced diligently, finding that his growing sensitivity to mystical energies actually enhanced his understanding of wand movements. By his 8th birthday, he could consistently perform several first-year Hogwarts spells with the training wand, along with creating simple mystical shields and energy projections without one. Not all was study and practice, however. Strange ensured Harry experienced childhood joys he'd been denied at the Dursleys. They visited museums and parks, watched movies, and ate ice cream. Strange proved to be a surprisingly indulgent guardian, though he maintained firm boundaries around Harry's safety and magical education. "Balance," he told Harry often. "Magic without humanity becomes cold and empty. Life without magic, for those with the gift, becomes hollow and incomplete. We seek the middle path." Through it all, Harry waited for someone from the wizarding world to come looking for him. Strange had explained that his disappearance had certainly been noticed. "Dumbledore will have tracked the dissolution of the Blood Wards," he'd said. "But finding you here, behind the Sanctum's protections, will prove challenging even for him." It was nearly 3 months after Harry's rescue when those words were tested. He and Strange were in the main hall, practicing basic shield charms, when every mystical alarm in the Sanctum triggered simultaneously. Strange immediately pushed Harry behind him, his cloak flaring protectively as he faced the entrance. "Someone's attempting to breach our outer wards. Someone powerful." The massive doors of the Sanctum shuddered. Strange made a complex gesture, reinforcing them with bands of magical energy. "Is it him?" Harry asked nervously. "Voldemort?" "No," Strange said grimly. "This feels different. Controlled, focused." "Wong." Wong appeared from a side corridor, already in a defensive stance. "I feel it. Wand wielder. Exceptionally strong." The doors shuddered again. This time, a voice called from outside. "Dr. Stephen Strange. I must speak with you regarding Harry Potter." The voice was calm but commanding, filled with quiet authority. Strange glanced at Harry. "As expected. Albus Dumbledore has found us." "What do we do?" Harry whispered. Strange straightened his shoulders. "We talk. But on our terms." He looked to Wong. "Be ready." With a gesture, Strange partially lowered the Sanctum's defenses, enough to allow communication but not entry. The doors stopped shuddering. "Professor Dumbledore," Strange called. "Your reputation precedes you. However, this is not Hogwarts, and your authority doesn't extend to the New York Sanctum." There was a pause. "Then, I seek only the welfare of young Harry, Dr. Strange. His protection is my primary concern." Strange's expression hardened. "Protection? Like the protection of being locked in a cupboard? Of being starved and neglected by those who should have cared for him?" Another pause, longer this time. When Dumbledore spoke again, his voice was heavy with what sounded like genuine regret. "If what you say is true, then I have made a grave error. One I wish to correct. May I enter, so we might discuss this properly?" Strange considered, then looked at Harry. "It's your choice, Harry. Do you want to meet him?" Harry hesitated. He'd heard so much about Dumbledore, the greatest wizard of the age, the man who'd placed him with the Dursleys, the headmaster of Hogwarts. Curiosity won out over apprehension. "Yes," he decided. "But, can you stay with me?" "Every moment," Strange promised. With a more complex gesture, he altered the Sanctum's defenses to allow a single visitor entry. "You may enter, Professor. Alone." The doors swung open to reveal an elderly man with a long silver beard, half-moon spectacles, and robes of deep purple embroidered with silver stars. Despite his age, he stood straight and tall, an aura of gentle power surrounding him. Albus Dumbledore stepped into the Sanctum, his keen blue eyes taking in everything at once, the artifacts, Wong's defensive posture, Strange's protective stance, and finally, Harry himself. "Harry," he said softly. "You look so much like your father. But you have your mother's eyes." Harry shifted uncomfortably under the intense gaze. "So I've been told." Dumbledore turned to Strange. "I must admit, Dr. Strange, when Harry vanished from Privet Drive, I did not expect to find him in the care of the Sorcerer Supreme. And I did not expect the chief warlock of the Wizengamot to have placed the savior of the wizarding world in an abusive home," Strange countered. "Yet here we are." Tension crackled between them, two immensely powerful magical practitioners measuring each other. "Perhaps," Dumbledore said carefully, "we should sit and discuss this situation calmly. For Harry's sake." Strange nodded shortly. With a wave of his hand, a sitting area formed in the center of the hall, for comfortable chairs arranged around a low table. "Tea, Professor?" Wong asked, his tone making it clear he remained wary. "That would be most welcome, thank you," Dumbledore replied. As they settled into the chairs, Harry choosing to sit beside Strange rather than Dumbledore, the old wizard studied Harry with a mixture of concern and relief. "You seem well, Harry," he observed. "Healthy. Happy, even." "I am," Harry confirmed. "Dr. Strange and Wong have been teaching me about magic. Both kinds." Dumbledore's eyebrows rose. "Both kinds?" "Wand magic and the mystic arts," Strange clarified. "Harry shows remarkable aptitude for both. His magical core integrates with dimensional energies in ways I've never seen before." "Fascinating," Dumbledore murmured. "And perhaps not surprising, given his lineage." He accepted a cup of tea from Wong with a nod of thanks. "But highly unusual. The traditions have remained separate for centuries, by mutual agreement." "Agreements can change," Strange said. "Especially when they no longer serve the greater good you're so fond of invoking." Dumbledore winced slightly at that. "You know of my philosophies." "I've done my research," Strange said dryly. "Just as you've doubtlessly done yours on me." "Indeed." Dumbledore sipped his tea. "The Ancient One spoke highly of you, in our limited correspondence." That seemed to surprise Strange. "You knew the Ancient One?" "We met during the war against Grindelwald. Different approaches to the same problem, the protection of the innocent." The tension in the room eased slightly at this revelation of a common connection. "Now," Dumbledore continued, setting down his cup, I must address the matter at hand. Harry's placement with his relatives was based on powerful blood magic, protection through his mother's sacrifice that could only be maintained through family connection. We're aware of the blood wards, Strange said. What we found unacceptable was the complete lack of monitoring of Harry's welfare within those wards. Dumbledore's expression grew somber. I had monitoring charms in place, but it seems they were insufficient. They tracked his health and magical development, but not. He hesitated. Not whether he was being treated like a human being. Strange suggested coldly. A grave oversight, Dumbledore admitted. One for which I can only apologize to Harry directly. He turned to the boy. Harry, I am truly sorry for what you endured. My intentions were to keep you safe from external threats, but I failed to ensure your well-being within that protection. Harry studied the old wizard carefully. The apology seemed genuine, but... Why didn't anyone ever check on me, he asked. In person, I mean. A valid question, Dumbledore acknowledged. There was a neighbor, Mrs. Figg, who was supposed to report any concerns. And various members of the order did patrol the area. But I instructed them to maintain distance, to avoid drawing attention to your location. He sighed. In hindsight, it was an error in judgment. One that won't be repeated, Strange stated firmly. Harry remains under my protection now. Dumbledore frowned slightly. I'm concerned about his magical education. Hogwarts has been expecting him since birth. His name has been down in the book since the day he was born. And he'll attend Hogwarts when the time comes, Strange surprised them both by saying. I have no intention of depriving Harry of his birthright or his heritage. But his training in the mystic arts will continue alongside his wizarding education. Harry looked at Strange with surprise and delight. He'd assumed attending Hogwarts might be impossible now. I see, Dumbledore said thoughtfully. A compromise, then. He turned to Harry. Would that arrangement suit you, my boy? Harry nodded eagerly. Yes, sir. I want to learn everything. About my parents, about wand magic, about the mystic arts. All of it. Dumbledore smiled, the first genuine smile since his arrival. Your thirst for knowledge reminds me of your mother. Lily was exceptionally bright. There's one more thing, Strange said. Something you should know. He glanced at Harry, who nodded permission. We removed a soul fragment from Harry's scar. Voldemort's soul fragment. Dumbledore went very still, his tea forgotten. You removed it? How? Mystical surgery, essentially, Strange explained. With assistance from others with particular talents in that area. I had suspected something of the sort, Dumbledore admitted. But I believed it could only be removed through more drastic means. You mean through my death, Harry said quietly. Dumbledore looked pained. I had hoped to find another solution before that became necessary. But yes, according to my research into such magic, that was the most likely outcome. Strange leaned forward. Which raises the question of why you left it there for 6 years without attempting to address it. I needed to understand it fully first, Dumbledore defended. Soul magic is among the darkest, most complex forms of wizardry. One mistake could have been catastrophic. And yet we managed it, Strange countered. Because we approached the problem from outside the limitations of wand magic tradition. A fair point, Dumbledore conceded. And one that perhaps justifies your approach to Harry's education. He turned to Harry again. The fragment, did you notice any effects from its removal? Harry nodded. Everything feels clearer now. Colors are brighter. And I don't get headaches anymore. Headaches? Dumbledore inquired. They started when I was about 5, Harry explained. Sharp pain in my scar sometimes. Uncle Vernon just said I was making it up for attention. Dumbledore closed his eyes briefly, his expression pained. Another sign I should have investigated more thoroughly. There's more, Strange added. We believe the soul fragment was not an accident. That Voldemort created multiple such fragments intentionally. Dumbledore's face grew grave. Yes. I have come to the same conclusion. Horcruxes, the darkest of magic. Objects in which a wizard conceals parts of their soul to anchor them to life even if their body is destroyed. So he's still out there, Harry said. Like you thought. In a weakened state, Dumbledore agreed. But yes, I believe so. And eventually, he will attempt to return. Strange looked at Harry with concern, but the boy's expression showed determination rather than fear. Then we need to be ready, Harry said simply. Something like pride flickered across Dumbledore's features. Indeed, Harry. And perhaps this unexpected alliance between our magical traditions is exactly what will be needed to face that threat when it comes. He rose, extending a hand to Strange. I propose a compromise, Dr. Strange. Harry remains under your guardianship, training in both traditions. When he turns 11, he attends Hogwarts as planned, but with arrangements for his continued mystic education. Perhaps during holidays and through special dispensation for weekend travel via your portals. Strange stood as well, considering the offered hand. And the British Ministry of Magic? Will they accept such an arrangement? Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. Leave the ministry to me. Some advantages come with being Chief Warlock. After a moment, Strange shook Dumbledore's hand. Agreed. With one condition, Harry's welfare remains paramount. Should Hogwarts prove unsafe, or should issues arise with his treatment there, I reserve the right to withdraw him immediately. That seems reasonable, Dumbledore agreed. Though I assure you, Hogwarts is among the safest places in Britain. Strange raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. Dumbledore turned to Harry. Until we meet again at Hogwarts, Harry, I wish you well in your studies. Your parents would be proud of the young man you're becoming. Thank you, sir, Harry said, feeling oddly touched. With a final nod to Wong, Dumbledore moved toward the door. He paused at the threshold, looking back. Dr. Strange, I sense this is not the last time our paths will cross. I look forward to learning from your perspective on magic, as I hope you might occasionally value mine. Strange inclined his head slightly. Knowledge shared benefits all, Professor. The Sanctum's doors will remain open to you, should you need assistance. As will Hogwarts to you, Dumbledore replied. With that, he departed, the doors swinging closed behind him. Harry let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. That was intense. Strange's lips twitched. Conversations between Sorcerer Supreme and Supreme Mugwump tend to be. Wong appeared with another tray of tea. He's more reasonable than I expected. Dumbledore has always understood the value of adaptation, Strange mused. Though I suspect we've disrupted years of careful planning on his part. Is that bad? Harry asked worriedly. Strange placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. On the contrary. The best plans are those that can evolve when new information arises. Dumbledore strikes me as someone who prefers being several steps ahead. We've simply changed the board. Harry nodded, then asked the question foremost in his mind. So I really get to go to Hogwarts? When I'm 11? Of course, Strange said. It's your heritage, Harry. The world your parents knew. But you'll have something they didn't, a broader perspective on magic itself. Harry grinned, excitement bubbling up. 3 years seemed like forever to wait, but he'd have plenty to learn in the meantime. Back to practice, he suggested. Strange smiled, impressed by the boy's dedication. Actually, I think we've earned an afternoon off. How about that science museum you wanted to visit? The one with the planetarium? Harry's eyes lit up. Really? Really? Magic is important, Harry, but so is being a kid sometimes. As Strange opened a portal to the museum, Harry felt a surge of happiness. For the first time in his life, he had a real home, a future to look forward to, and people who genuinely cared about him. Whatever challenges awaited, Hogwarts, Voldemort, balancing two magical traditions, he wouldn't face them alone. The next 3 years passed in a whirlwind of learning and growth. Under Strange's guidance, Harry progressed in both magical traditions at a remarkable pace. His natural talent, combined with the unique way his wizard's core interacted with dimensional energies, allowed him to develop a personal style that blended elements of both. By his 10th birthday, Harry could conjure shields that combined the protective geometries of the mystic arts with the intent-focused power of wizarding magic. He could channel dimensional energy through training wands to enhance standard spells, or use wandless gestures to direct his internal magical core. "Your approach is unorthodox," Wong commented during one practice session, watching Harry manipulate objects using a hybrid of levitation charm and mystical telekinesis. "But effective. The best innovations often come from crossing boundaries," Strange added approvingly. "Just be careful at Hogwarts, some traditionalists might find your methods concerning." Harry nodded, lowering the floating books carefully back to their shelves. "I'll be careful." His education wasn't limited to magic. Wong ensured he received a thorough grounding in mundane subjects, mathematics, sciences, literature, and history. Strange supplemented this with practical knowledge of the world, taking Harry on expeditions both magical and mundane. They visited magical communities across America, giving Harry exposure to traditions beyond British wizardry. They explored dimensional gateways in Peru, studied with shamans in New Zealand, and observed astronomical alignments at ancient sites in Japan. Through it all, Harry grew from the skinny, frightened boy in the cupboard into a confident, thoughtful young person. He remained small for his age, early malnutrition had taken its toll, but was otherwise healthy and fit from years of physical training alongside magical studies. As his 11th birthday approached, preparations for Hogwarts began in earnest. Strange arranged a trip to Diagon Alley in London, using a portal to bypass the need for international travel documents. "Remember," Strange cautioned as they prepared to depart, "in Britain, you're not just Harry. You're Harry Potter, the boy who lived. People will stare. They'll have expectations." Harry grimaced. "I know. We've practiced this." Indeed, they had run numerous simulations in the mirror dimension, scenarios where Harry was recognized, approached by strangers, questioned about his scar or his parents or Voldemort. "Just be yourself," Wong advised. "The self we know, thoughtful, kind, and not defined by a title given to you as an infant." Harry nodded, straightening his clothes, normal Muggle attire rather than wizarding robes, though Strange wore his customary mystical garb, complete with the cloak of levitation. "Ready?" Strange asked. "Ready," Harry confirmed. The portal opened directly behind the leaky cauldron in London. They entered the wizarding pub from the rear, bypassing most of the patrons. Still, heads turned immediately at the sight of Strange in his distinctive attire. Tom the bartender looked up, his eyes widening first at Strange, then positively bulging as they fell on Harry. "Bless my soul," he whispered. "It's Harry Potter." The pub went silent. Then, all at once, everyone seemed to surge forward. "Welcome back, Mr. Potter. Can I shake your hand?" "It's an honor, Mr. Potter." Harry handled it with practiced calm, politely acknowledging greetings while Strange created subtle space around them, his cloak occasionally shifting to gently nudge two eager admirers back. When Hagrid arrived to escort them, Dumbledore having arranged this as a courtesy, the crowd finally gave them breathing room. The half-giant's massive presence parted the throng like a ship through water. "Harry!" Hagrid boomed. "Last time I saw you, you was just a baby. And now look at ya." His beetle-black eyes crinkled with genuine delight, then turned curiously to Strange. "And you must be the Dr. Dumbledore mentioned. Funny sort o' robes you got there." "Dr. Stephen Strange," Strange introduced himself, looking up, way up, at Hagrid with interest. "Sorcerer Supreme and Master of the New York Sanctum." Hagrid blinked. Right. Rubius Hagrid, keeper of keys and grounds at Hogwarts. He turned back to Harry. Dumbledore sent me to help ya get your school things. Though I expect Dr. Strange knows his way round well enough. Actually, Strange said, this is my first visit to Diagon Alley. We'd appreciate your guidance. Harry shot Strange a surprised look. His guardian rarely admitted to needing help with anything. But he understood the strategy. Building bridges with Hogwarts staff would be important. Hagrid beamed. Well then. Let's start with Gringotts, shall we? Harry'll need to access his vault. The trip through Diagon Alley was a whirlwind of new experiences. Gringotts impressed Harry with its grandeur and the obvious respect the goblins showed both Strange and Hagrid. His trust vault, filled with gold galleons, silver sickles, and bronze nuts, was a tangible connection to his parents that left him momentarily speechless. Your father came from an old family, Strange explained quietly as Harry filled a pouch with coins. The Potters were well respected and comfortable, though not ostentatiously wealthy like some pure bloodlines. Shopping proceeded smoothly, with Hagrid's presence continuing to ease their way through the crowds. At Madame Malkin's, Harry met a pale, pointed-faced boy who introduced himself as Draco Malfoy. You'll be attending Hogwarts too? Draco asked, eyeing Harry with interest that turned to shock when he gave his name. Potter? The Harry Potter? Father said you disappeared years ago. I've been in America, Harry said simply. Studying. America? Draco looked intrigued despite himself. What's their magic like? Father says American wizards are terribly disorganized compared to us. Before Harry could answer, the boy's eyes fell on Strange, who was examining a display of enchanted fabrics nearby. Who's that with you? He's dressed oddly, even for a wizard. My guardian, Harry replied. Dr. Stephen Strange. He's the Sorcerer Supreme. Draco's eyebrows shot up. A sorcerer? But that's not proper wizardry, is it? More like what Muggles think magic is. Harry felt a flare of defensiveness but kept his expression neutral. It's a different magical tradition. Just as valid as wand magic, just different approaches. Draco looked skeptical but curious. Well, which house do you think you'll be in at Hogwarts? I know I'll be in Slytherin, all my family have been. Imagine being in Hufflepuff, I think I'd leave, wouldn't you? There's value in all the houses, Harry said diplomatically, recalling Wong's lessons on Hogwarts history. They each emphasize different strengths. Draco looked surprised at this measured response, as if expecting either agreement or argument rather than consideration. Their conversation was cut short as Madame Malkin finished with Draco's robes. The boy left with a backward glance at Harry that mixed curiosity with assessment. Making friends already? Strange asked as he rejoined Harry. Not sure friend is the right word, Harry said thoughtfully. He seemed very concerned with status and appearances. You'll meet all types at Hogwarts, Strange noted. Just as you would at any school. Judge people by their actions and choices, not their family names or houses. The most significant moment came at Ollivander's, where Harry would finally receive his own wand. The elderly wandmaker's silver eyes widened at the sight of Strange. A master of the mystic arts, in my shop. Ollivander murmured. How extraordinary. And young Mr. Potter too. I've been expecting you. The process of finding Harry's wand proved lengthy. Wand after wand was tried and rejected, with Ollivander growing increasingly excited rather than frustrated. Tricky customer, he said gleefully. But not to worry, the wand chooses the wizard, and yours is here somewhere. Finally, Ollivander presented a holly and phoenix feather wand, 11 inches. The moment Harry touched it, a stream of red and gold sparks shot from the end, but instead of forming the usual shower, they swirled into complex mandala-like patterns before dissipating. Curious, Ollivander whispered. Very curious. What's curious? Harry asked, though he suspected he knew. I remember every wand I've ever sold, Mr. Potter. The phoenix whose tail feather resides in your wand gave another feather, just one other. It is curious that you should be destined for this wand when its brother gave you that scar. Harry nodded, having expected something of the sort. Voldemort's wand. Ollivander flinched at the name but nodded. But there's something else curious too. The way your magic interacted with it just now. You've been trained in other arts, haven't you? Your magical core has been expanded, somehow. Strange stepped forward. Harry has received training in the mystic arts alongside preparation for traditional wizardry. Extraordinary, Ollivander breathed. Such a combination hasn't been attempted in, well, I can't recall the last documented case. The results could be unpredictable. Or they could be exactly what's needed, Strange countered calmly. Ollivander studied Harry intently. Indeed, Dr. Strange. Indeed they might. Their shopping complete, they bid farewell to Hagrid, who extracted a promise from Harry to visit his hut after arriving at Hogwarts. He's got a good heart, Harry observed as they stepped through a portal back to the Sanctum. Most people do, Strange agreed. It's what they do with that heart that matters. The remaining weeks before September 1st were spent in final preparations. Harry devoured his schoolbooks, already familiar with many concepts thanks to his years of study. Strange and Wong helped him pack, ensuring he had everything needed for Hogwarts while adding a few extras, specialized journals for recording his ongoing mystical studies, communication devices that would work despite Hogwarts' anti-technology enchantments, and a few defensive artifacts that wouldn't trigger the school's detection wards. Remember, Strange said the night before Harry's departure, Hogwarts will be different from the Sanctum. The approach to magic, the structure, the expectations, all different. Be open to learning their ways, even as you maintain what you've learned here. Harry nodded, excitement and nervousness warring within him. What if I don't fit in? I'm not like other wizarding children. I haven't grown up in their world. You'll find your people, Strange assured him. Those who value you for yourself, not for your name or your history or even your magic. And remember, the Sanctum remains your home. You can return any weekend if needed. The next morning, Strange created a portal directly to platform 9 3/4, bypassing the need to navigate Muggle London with a trunk and owl cage. Hedwig, a snowy owl that had been Hagrid's birthday present to Harry, hooted indignantly at the dimensional transition but settled quickly. The platform was crowded with students and parents. Many stopped to stare at the sight of a glowing orange portal depositing Harry and Strange beside the Hogwarts Express. Show off, Harry muttered good-naturedly. Strange smirked. Just establishing that you have support beyond the conventional. It sets a tone. They found an empty compartment near the end of the train. Strange helped Harry stow his trunk, then stood awkwardly for a moment. He wasn't normally given to displays of emotion, but Harry could see the concern in his eyes. I'll be fine, Harry assured him. Really? I know you will, Strange said. Then, surprising them both, he pulled Harry into a quick, tight hug. Wong made me promise to do that, he added gruffly as he released him. Harry grinned. Tell him I appreciate it. Strange nodded, his expression growing serious. Remember your training. Both traditions. And if anything feels wrong, anything at all, use the communication stone immediately. I will, Harry promised. With a final nod, Strange stepped back through his portal, which closed with a shower of sparks just as the train whistle blew. Harry settled into his seat, watching families say their final goodbyes on the platform. Despite his excitement about Hogwarts, he felt a pang of something like homesickness already, not for a place, but for the people who had become his family. The compartment door slid open, revealing a tall, gangly boy with red hair and freckles. Anyone sitting there? He asked, pointing to the seat opposite Harry. Everywhere else is full. Harry shook his head, and the boy sat down. I'm Ron, by the way. Ron Weasley. Harry Potter, Harry replied, watching with now familiar amusement as Ron's eyes widened and flicked to his forehead. "So it's true," Ron exclaimed. "I thought Fred and George were having me on. Do you really have the, you know?" He pointed at Harry's forehead. Harry pushed back his hair to show the lightning scar. "Wicked," Ron breathed. Then, seeming to remember his manners, he added, "Is it true you've been living in America? With some sort of super wizard?" Harry smiled slightly. "Something like that. My guardian is Dr. Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme. He practices a different kind of magic." Ron's eyes grew even wider. "Different how?" As the train pulled out of the station, Harry began explaining the basics of the mystic arts to an increasingly fascinated Ron Weasley. It was, he reflected, a fitting start to his journey into the wizarding world, building bridges between traditions, one conversation at a time. The countryside began to speed past the window as the Hogwarts Express gathered momentum, carrying Harry toward the next chapter of his extraordinary life, a life that had changed irrevocably that day when a sorcerer found a boy in a cupboard. Chapter 2, Two Worlds of Magic. Harry's first real glimpse of Hogwarts hit him like a punch to the chest. The castle loomed against the night sky, windows blazing with golden light, towers reaching toward stars that seemed brighter here than anywhere else. Even after 4 years of living in the New York Sanctum with its impossible architecture and mystical wonders, the sight took his breath away. "Whoa," Ron whispered beside him, their tiny boat gliding across the black lake. "It's massive." Hermione Granger, the bushy-haired girl they'd met on the train, was practically vibrating with excitement. "It's even more impressive than Hogwarts, a history describes. The architecture is a remarkable blend of Norman, Gothic and, it's alive," Harry interrupted softly. Both Ron and Hermione turned to him. "What do you mean, alive?" Ron asked. Harry couldn't really explain how he knew, but his mystical training had made him sensitive to certain energies. "The castle, it's not just stone and magic. It's aware. Not like a person, but..." He trailed off, feeling the gentle pulse of Hogwarts magic reaching out to welcome the new students. Hermione looked skeptical. "That's not mentioned in any of the books I've read." "Not everything is in books," Harry replied with a small smile. The boats docked at an underground harbor, and Hagrid led them up stone steps to where Professor McGonagall waited. Harry tried to focus on her explanation about houses and sorting, but his senses were overwhelmed by the magical currents swirling through the castle. Strange had warned him this might happen. "Your sensitivity to magical energies will make new environments intense," he'd explained. "Especially places with centuries of accumulated magical resonance." Harry took a deep breath and centered himself, using the meditation techniques Wong had drilled into him for years. The magical noise receded to manageable levels just as the ghosts appeared, floating through the wall and startling most of the first years. "Fascinating," Harry murmured, studying their translucent forms. "Different from astral projection, but similar principles." "What's astral projection?" Hermione asked immediately, latching onto the unfamiliar term. Before Harry could answer, McGonagall returned to lead them into the Great Hall. The enchanted ceiling drew gasps from the first years. While Hermione whispered about reading about it in Hogwarts, a history, Harry was analyzing the spellwork. Not the incantations or wand movements, but the underlying magical structure, the way reality had been folded to create a window into the outside world without actually removing the ceiling's physical protection. "If I adapted the mirror dimension principles," he muttered to himself. "You say something, mate?" Ron asked. "Just thinking out loud," Harry replied as they stopped before the Sorting Hat. As the hat sang about the 4 houses, Harry considered where he might belong. Strange had refused to speculate, insisting that sorting was a personal journey, not a predetermined outcome. Still, Harry couldn't help wondering. His parents had been Gryffindors, but he'd developed a Ravenclaw's thirst for knowledge, a Hufflepuff's appreciation for hard work, and even some of Slytherin's strategic thinking under Strange's mentorship. Students began being called forward alphabetically. Harry watched each sorting with interest, noting how quickly the hat decided for some, while taking longer with others. When Hermione was sorted into Gryffindor after nearly 2 minutes, he raised an eyebrow. He'd pegged her for Ravenclaw. Finally, Potter, Harry, echoed through the hall. The whispers started immediately. Potter, did she say? The Harry Potter? Where's he been all these years? Harry walked forward, conscious of every eye on him. He sat on the stool, and the hat dropped over his eyes. Well, well, said a small voice in his ear. What have we here? Oh my, how unusual. A wizard trained in the mystic arts. I haven't seen such a combination in, well, not since the Founder's time. You can see that? Harry asked mentally. I see everything in your mind, Mr. Potter. Your training with the Sorcerer Supreme, your understanding of both magical traditions, most impressive. Now, where to put you? You've got courage aplenty for Gryffindor. A fine mind for Ravenclaw. Loyalty for Hufflepuff. And yes, ambition and resourcefulness for Slytherin. I just want to be where I can learn and grow, Harry thought. Where I can bridge worlds. Bridge worlds, eh? Interesting phrasing. Very well then, better be Gryffindor. The last word was shouted to the hall. Harry removed the hat and walked to the Gryffindor table amid thunderous applause. The Weasley twins were chanting, "We got Potter. We got Potter," while Percy Weasley pompously shook his hand. As he sat down, Harry caught Dumbledore's eye at the staff table. The headmaster gave him a slight nod and raised his goblet in a tiny toast. Harry nodded back, then turned to introduce himself to his new housemates. The first week at Hogwarts was both familiar and utterly foreign to Harry. The rhythm of classes, the structure of lessons, the focus on specific incantations and wand movements, all differed significantly from his training at the Sanctum, where Strange emphasized understanding magical principles over memorizing specific spells. Mr. Potter, Professor Flitwick squeaked during their first charms lesson, would you demonstrate the levitation charm we've been practicing? Harry nodded, focusing on the feather before him. Wingardium Leviosa, he pronounced clearly, making the swish and flick movement. The feather rose smoothly, then kept rising, moving in a complex spiral pattern before settling back on the desk. Several students gasped. Excellent control. Flitwick exclaimed. Though the pattern was a bit unorthodox. 5 points to Gryffindor. Harry bit his lip. He'd unconsciously incorporated mystical gestures into the wand movement, enhancing the spell's precision. Strange had warned him about this, his hybrid approach would produce unexpected results. Transfiguration presented similar challenges. When McGonagall instructed them to turn matches into needles, Harry managed it on his first attempt, but his needle had strange, glowing runes etched along its length. Mr. Potter, McGonagall said, examining the needle with narrowed eyes, what exactly did you do here? I'm not sure, Professor, Harry admitted. I was visualizing the transformation as a shift in dimensional properties rather than just changing form. McGonagall's eyebrows rose. Dimensional properties? That's a 7th-year concept, at minimum. Oh, Harry said, realizing he'd revealed more advanced knowledge than a first-year should have. I've done some extra reading. McGonagall gave him a long look. Indeed. See me after class, please. That conversation had been surprisingly productive. After Harry explained, in carefully edited form, his prior magical education, McGonagall had assigned him additional reading to help integrate his knowledge with Hogwarts curriculum. Your approach isn't wrong, Mr. Potter, she'd said, just different. And potentially valuable. But you must master the fundamentals as taught here before expanding upon them. Potions, however, was another matter entirely. From the moment Harry entered the dungeon classroom, Professor Snape's hostility was palpable. Ah, yes, he said softly during roll call, Harry Potter. Our new celebrity. Draco Malfoy and his friends sniggered behind their hands. Harry kept his expression neutral, meeting Snape's gaze steadily. Tell me, Potter, Snape continued, what would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood? Thanks to Wong's insistence on comprehensive magical education, including potions theory, Harry actually knew this one. A sleeping potion called the Draught of Living Death, sir. Snape's eyes narrowed slightly. And where would you look if I told you to find a bezoar? In the stomach of a goat, sir. It's a stone that can neutralize most poisons. What is the difference, Potter, between monkshood and wolfsbane? Harry hesitated just a second. They're the same plant, sir. Also known as aconite. A flicker of something, surprise. Annoyance, crossed Snape's sallow face. Correct, he said curtly. It seems fame isn't everything. He swept away to begin the lesson without awarding any points. That was brilliant, Ron whispered. How'd you know all that? I had a strict teacher, Harry whispered back, thinking of Wong's uncompromising lessons. Throughout the class, Harry felt Snape's eyes on him, evaluating, assessing. When Harry and Ron's potion turned out nearly perfect, Harry quietly correcting Ron's technique several times, Snape merely curled his lip and moved on without comment. After class, Hermione caught up with Harry and Ron in the corridor. Harry, how did you know those answers? And your potion technique, you were adding counterclockwise stirs that weren't in the instructions. Harry shrugged. My guardian made sure I had a solid foundation before coming here. And the stirs helped distribute the heat more evenly. Hermione's eyes lit with that now familiar hunger for knowledge. Your guardian, he's the one Ron was telling me about. The Sorcerer Supreme. Dr. Strange, yes, Harry confirmed. What exactly does that title mean? I couldn't find anything about it in the library. Harry glanced around the crowded corridor. It's complicated. Maybe we can talk about it somewhere more private. That evening, in a quiet corner of the Gryffindor common room, Harry explained the basics to Ron and Hermione. He'd decided to trust them with at least the general outline. Keeping his entire background secret would be exhausting and counterproductive. So the mystic arts are about channeling dimensional energies, Hermione summarized, her quill scratching notes on parchment, while wizarding magic comes from an internal magical core. Essentially, yes, Harry nodded. Though there's overlap. All magic is connected, just accessed and directed in different ways. And you can do both? Ron asked, eyes wide. That's why your spells look different sometimes. I'm still learning to separate them properly, Harry admitted. Dr. Strange says I need to master each tradition individually before trying to combine them deliberately. Could you teach us? Hermione asked eagerly. Some of the mystical techniques. Harry hesitated. Some basic principles, maybe. But the full mystical training requires physical conditioning, years of study, and, well, a natural aptitude not everyone has. Like being a wizard, you mean? Ron asked. You have to be born with it. Not exactly. Non-magical people can learn the mystic arts with enough dedication. But having a magical core makes it easier to perceive and channel dimensional energies. Hermione looked thoughtful. So theoretically, any witch or wizard could learn, with proper training. Theoretically, Harry agreed. But the magical communities have stayed separate for centuries. There are political reasons. Politics, Ron snorted. Dad's always complaining about that at the ministry. Their conversation was interrupted by Percy Weasley announcing curfew for first years. As they headed for their dormitories, Hermione caught Harry's arm. Would you show me something? She asked. Just a small demonstration of the mystic arts. Harry considered, then nodded. Glancing around to ensure they weren't observed, he made a small circular gesture with his hand. Golden sparks formed a mandala-like pattern in the air, spinning slowly before dissipating. Hermione's eyes widened. That wasn't a spell. You didn't use your wand or say an incantation. Different approach, different methods, Harry said with a small smile. Good night, Hermione. Good night, she replied, staring at the space where the sparks had been, her mind clearly racing with new questions. The weekend after their first week of classes, Harry sought privacy to contact Strange as promised. Finding a secluded courtyard, he removed a small smooth stone from his pocket, one of Wong's enchanted communication devices. Activating it with a touch and whispered word, he waited as the stone's surface rippled like water. Then Strange's face appeared, miniaturized but clear. "Harry. How was your first week?" Harry grinned. "Amazing. Challenging. Weird. The castle itself is incredible, it's like it has its own consciousness." "Centuries of concentrated magic will do that," Strange nodded. "And your classes?" "Good, mostly. I'm having trouble keeping the magical styles separate though. My spells keep coming out, enhanced." Strange's expression grew thoughtful. "That was expected. Your magical core and mystical training have become intertwined. Don't fight it too hard, adaptation is better than suppression. Just be careful not to show off unnecessarily." "I'm trying not to," Harry assured him. "I've made friends, Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger. I told them a little about my background." "Good. Isolation serves no purpose. Just use discretion about how much you reveal, and to whom." Harry nodded, then hesitated. "There's a professor here who seems to hate me." "Snape. He teaches potions." Strange's eyes narrowed. "Severus Snape. Dumbledore mentioned him. He has history with your parents." "What kind of history?" "Complex. He and your father were rivals." "And your mother?" Strange paused. It might be better for Dumbledore to explain that connection. "But know this, Harry, whatever his personal feelings, Dumbledore trusts him. And I've found Dumbledore's judgment of character to be generally sound." Harry wasn't entirely satisfied with this answer, but he nodded. "There's something else. The third-floor corridor is forbidden. Dumbledore said anyone who goes there would die a most painful death." Strange raised an eyebrow. "Interesting choice of warning for a school of children. I sense something there. Something powerful being contained. Have you investigated?" Harry shook his head. "Not yet. I wanted to settle in first, get the lay of the land." "Wise," Strange approved. "Magic always leaves traces. Observe, gather information, but don't act rashly. If it seems truly dangerous, contact me immediately." "I will," Harry promised. "How's Wong?" Missing his student, Strange said with a slight smile. "Though he'd never admit it. He's preparing materials for your weekend studies." They spoke a few minutes more before ending the communication. As Harry pocketed the stone, he sensed someone watching. Turning quickly, he caught a glimpse of movement, a billowing black robe disappearing around a corner. Snape. Had the potions master overheard his conversation? Harry frowned, making a mental note to find more secure locations for future communications. As September gave way to October, Harry settled into the rhythm of Hogwarts life. Classes became more challenging as they moved beyond basic theory. Harry excelled in practical magic but found the theoretical essays sometimes tedious. At the Sanctum, theory and practice had always been integrated, not separated into distinct lessons. His friendship with Ron and Hermione deepened, despite their occasional friction. Ron's laid-back approach to schoolwork clashed with Hermione's intense academic drive, while Harry often found himself mediating between them. "You don't understand, Ron," Hermione would insist, "these foundations are critical for advanced magic later." "We're 11, Ron would counter. "We've got years before advanced magic. Besides, Harry doesn't study every minute and he's top of the class." "Harry had 4 years of prior magical training," Hermione would retort. "That's hardly a fair comparison." Harry found Hermione's intellectual curiosity refreshing. She peppered him with questions about the mystic arts, devouring the basic concepts he shared and asking for more. Though initially skeptical about magical knowledge that couldn't be found in Hogwarts' library, she gradually accepted that there were different valid approaches to understanding magic. Ron, meanwhile, offered Harry something equally valuable: normality. He treated Harry not as the boy who lived or the Sorcerer Supreme's protégé, but just as another boy who loved Quidditch, exploding Snap, and sneaking extra desserts from the kitchen. Through Ron, Harry gained insight into ordinary wizarding life that books could never provide. Flying lessons revealed another of Harry's natural talents. His first time on a broomstick, he took to the air with instinctive grace, performing a daring dive to catch Neville's Remembrall after Malfoy threw it. Harry Potter. Professor McGonagall's voice froze him mid-air. Landing reluctantly, he prepared for punishment, only to be introduced to Oliver Wood and recruited as Gryffindor's new seeker. Youngest player in a century, Wood kept repeating during Harry's first practice. McGonagall says you're a natural. We might actually have a shot at the cup this year. Harry wrote to Strange about his appointment to the team, receiving a package a few days later containing comprehensive books on Quidditch strategy and magical sports medicine, along with a note: Harry, congratulations. Physical applications of magic develop different neural pathways than academic ones. Quidditch will improve your spatial awareness and split-second magical channeling. Wong disapproves of the game's danger, but I reminded him of the risks I took in my own youth. Don't ask, those stories are for when you're older. Use the enclosed wisely. The strategy book was recommended by a British contact who apparently knows Quidditch inside and out. Strange P.S. Wong insists I remind you not to neglect your weekend mystical studies despite Quidditch practice. Halloween brought Harry's first real confrontation at Hogwarts. When Professor Quirrell burst into the Great Hall announcing a troll in the dungeons, Harry immediately remembered that Hermione, upset after Ron's thoughtless comments, was crying in the girls' bathroom. We have to find her, he told Ron as prefects led students toward their dormitories. She doesn't know about the troll. Slipping away from the Gryffindors, they searched for Hermione, only to discover the troll had found her first. The massive creature had cornered her in the bathroom, its club raised high. Hermione, move! Harry shouted, his wand already out. As Ron distracted the troll by throwing pipes, Harry acted instinctively. Rather than using a standard spell, he combined techniques, a levitation charm enhanced with mystical gestures that gave him far greater control. The troll's club didn't just float, it whipped out of its grasp with precision, then slammed back down onto its owner's head with calculated force. The troll swayed, then collapsed with a crash that shook the entire bathroom. Is it dead? Hermione asked shakily, emerging from under a sink. Just knocked out, Harry replied, pocketing his wand. Are you okay? Before she could answer, Professors McGonagall, Snape, and Quirrell burst into the bathroom. McGonagall's fury at their recklessness was tempered only slightly when Hermione took the blame. But as they explained what happened, Harry noticed something odd. Snape was bleeding from a gash on his leg, which he quickly covered when he saw Harry looking. Later, in the common room, Harry shared his suspicion. Snape wasn't with the other teachers when Quirrell announced the troll. And now he's injured. You think he let the troll in? Why would he do that? Ron asked. Distraction, Harry said thoughtfully. Something's hidden in that third-floor corridor. Maybe he tried to get to it while everyone was dealing with the troll. But Professor Snape is a teacher, Hermione protested. He wouldn't. I don't know, Harry admitted. But I'm going to find out what's being hidden. The mystery deepened during Harry's first Quidditch match. He'd just spotted the snitch when his broom began bucking violently, trying to throw him off. Fighting for control, Harry reached for his magical training, both traditions. From the mystic arts, he drew stability, creating a subtle anchoring effect between himself and the broom. From his wizarding core, he pushed back against the foreign magic affecting the broom. The combination wasn't perfect, he still couldn't fully control the broom, but it kept him from falling. In the stands, Hermione had spotted Snape staring unblinkingly at Harry, muttering continuously. Taking decisive action, she crept beneath the stands and set fire to his robes. In the resulting chaos, Harry regained control of his broom and caught the snitch, winning the match. It was Snape, Hermione insisted afterward. He was jinxing your broom. Or counter-jinxing it, Harry said thoughtfully. Someone was definitely interfering, but I'm not sure it was Snape. Who else could it be? Ron demanded. Harry frowned. I don't know. But there's more going on here than we understand. That evening, Harry contacted Strange again, explaining what had happened. A jinxed broom is serious, Strange said, his expression grave. That's attempted murder, not schoolyard bullying. Are you certain Snape was responsible? No, Harry admitted. He had the opportunity, but something doesn't fit. When I managed to look around, I noticed Professor Quirrell was also staring at me without blinking. Quirrell? The defense teacher. He seems harmless, stutters constantly, jumps at shadows. But there's something off about him. His magical aura fluctuates strangely. Strange's eyes sharpened. What do you mean, fluctuates? Like there's more than one pattern overlapping. I noticed it during classes, but didn't think much of it until now. Harry, listen carefully, Strange said, his voice dropping. That description matches certain forms of magical possession. Don't confront him directly. Observe from a distance, strengthen your mental shields as Wong taught you, and report any unusual behavior immediately. Do you think he's working with Voldemort? Harry asked quietly. It's possible. The wraith form I detected when removing your scar fragment would seek a host. Be vigilant, but don't take unnecessary risks. After ending the communication, Harry sat for a long time, thinking. If Quirrell was possessed or working with Voldemort, what was he after at Hogwarts? What could be so valuable that Voldemort would risk sending an agent into Dumbledore's territory? His investigation gained momentum after a conversation with Hagrid, who accidentally let slip that the Forbidden Corridor contained something belonging to Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel. Flamel? Hermione repeated once they were alone. Why does that name sound familiar? He's an alchemist, Harry said immediately. Famous for creating the Philosopher's Stone, a substance that transforms base metals into gold and produces the elixir of life. Ron and Hermione stared at him. How do you know that? Hermione demanded. I've been through dozens of books looking for Flamel. Wong's magical history lessons, Harry explained. The Philosopher's Stone represents one of the pinnacles of magical achievement in the European tradition. It's mentioned in mystic texts too, though from a different perspective. So that's what's hidden in the school? Ron asked. A stone that makes gold and stops you from dying? No wonder Snape's after it. If it is the stone, Harry said thoughtfully, it would certainly attract Voldemort's attention. Especially if he's looking for a way to regain physical form. The Christmas holidays provided an opportunity for more direct investigation. With most students gone home, including Hermione, Harry and Ron had the run of the castle. Harry received permission to return to the Sanctum for part of the break, but arranged to spend Christmas itself at Hogwarts with Ron. Don't look so surprised, Strange said when Harry arrived at the Sanctum via portal. I understand the importance of friendship. Besides, we have serious training to accomplish before you return. The week at the Sanctum was intense. Strange and Wong pushed Harry's mystical training to new levels, focusing especially on defensive techniques and mystical detection. Your awareness of Quirrell's fluctuating aura shows your sensitivity is developing well, Wong noted during one session. Now you must learn to pierce disguises and concealments. They practiced with increasingly complex illusions and cloaking spells. By week's end, Harry could detect most magical concealments and even penetrate simpler ones. Remember, Strange cautioned before sending him back to Hogwarts, these skills are for protection and understanding, not confrontation. If you confirm Quirrell is hosting Voldemort, contact me immediately. Do not attempt to handle it yourself." Harry promised, though a part of him, the part that remembered years of strange stories about facing mystical threats, wondered if he might be ready to confront at least a weakened version of his parents' killer. Christmas morning at Hogwarts brought an unexpected gift, an invisibility cloak that had belonged to his father. The anonymous note claimed James Potter had left it in the sender's care before his death. "This is incredibly rare," Harry told Ron as they examined it. "And powerful. The magic feels old. Really old." "Wicked!" Ron exclaimed. "Think of the possibilities." Harry was already thinking, not of pranks or midnight kitchen raids, but of investigation. That very night, he used the cloak to explore the restricted section of the library, looking for more information on Flamel and the Philosopher's Stone. His research was interrupted when he nearly ran into Filch and had to flee, eventually finding refuge in an unused classroom. There, he discovered something unexpected, a magnificent mirror with the inscription, "Eris stra eru oit ube kafru oit onwosi." When Harry stood before it, he saw not just his own reflection, but a crowd of people standing behind him. His parents were there, smiling proudly. So were Strange and Wong. But there were others too, people he didn't recognize but somehow knew were his ancestors, generations of Potters. And strangest of all, beside them stood figures in familiar mystical garb, ancient sorcerers whose techniques he'd studied. "The Mirror of Erist," came Dumbledore's voice from behind him. "A dangerous artifact, Harry." Harry turned to find the headmaster watching him with gentle eyes. "You see your family," Dumbledore continued. "Both families, the one you lost and the one you found. And perhaps those who represent the traditions you bridge." Harry nodded. "What do you see, sir? When you look in the mirror?" Dumbledore's smile turned sad. "I see myself holding a pair of thick, woolen socks. One can never have enough socks." Harry didn't believe him for a second, but respected the deflection. "The mirror will be moved tomorrow, Harry," Dumbledore continued. "I ask that you not go looking for it again. It shows neither knowledge nor truth, and men have wasted away before it, entranced by what they see." "I understand, sir," Harry said. Then, taking a risk, he added, "Does this have anything to do with what's hidden on the third floor?" Dumbledore's eyebrows rose slightly. "Curiosity is a valuable trait, Harry, but sometimes dangerous. I would advise you to focus on your studies and leave certain mysteries to those equipped to handle them." "With respect, Professor," Harry said carefully, "I may be better equipped than you realize." "Ah, yes," Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. "Dr. Strange has been thorough in your education, I'm sure. But experience counts for much in matters of this kind." "Experience comes from facing challenges," Harry countered, "not avoiding them." Dumbledore studied him for a long moment. "You are quite remarkable, Harry. So young, yet you speak with unusual wisdom. But remember this, courage without caution becomes recklessness. Whatever you may suspect about our third-floor guest, I urge you to exercise restraint." With that gentle warning, Dumbledore escorted Harry back to Gryffindor Tower. As they walked, Harry sensed the headmaster evaluating him, reassessing previous assumptions. Good, Harry thought. Better that Dumbledore see him as a participant in events, not just a piece to be protected. When Hermione returned after the holidays, their investigation intensified. Armed with Harry's confirmation about Flamel and the stone, they focused on figuring out what protection surrounded it. There must be more than just that three-headed dog, Hermione reasoned as they huddled in the library. Logical defenses from different professors, probably. Definitely, Harry agreed. I can sense layered magical signatures when I get close to that corridor. Different types of spells, different magical approaches. How do we find out what they are? Ron asked. We don't, Harry said firmly. Not unless absolutely necessary. Our priority is making sure Quirrell, or whoever's after the stone, doesn't get it. Their surveillance of Quirrell continued through the spring term. Harry noticed the defense professor growing progressively thinner and paler, with occasional flashes of uncharacteristic anger breaking through his nervous facade. During one defense lesson, Harry deliberately mispronounced a shielding spell. Quirrell swooped down on him immediately. Foolish boy," he stuttered. "That mistake could get you killed." But as he leaned closer to correct Harry's wand work, Harry caught a glimpse of his eyes, and for just a moment, they flashed red. Harry tensed, ready to defend himself, but Quirrell's eyes returned to normal almost immediately. The professor moved away quickly, avoiding Harry for the rest of the class. That night, Harry reported the incident to Strange. "Red eyes?" Strange repeated, his expression darkening. "That confirms our suspicions. Voldemort is either possessing Quirrell or influencing him strongly. Should I tell Dumbledore?" "He likely suspects already," Strange said. "But yes, evidence of actual possession would be significant. Approach him tomorrow." Harry did just that, requesting a meeting with the headmaster and sharing what he'd observed. Dumbledore listened carefully, his expression grave. "I had concerns about Professor Quirrell since his return from sabbatical," he admitted. "But possession is difficult to prove without confrontation, which might endanger other students." "So what do we do?" Harry asked. "We remain vigilant. The stone is well protected, not just by enchantments but by the very nature of the Mirror of Erist, which now serves as its final guardian. Only one who wishes to find the stone, but not use it, can retrieve it." Harry considered this. "That's clever. But if Voldemort realizes the mechanism, he would need to overcome his own nature," Dumbledore said simply. "A nearly impossible task for one so consumed by desire for power." As Harry left Dumbledore's office, he wasn't entirely reassured. Clever protections could still be bypassed with enough determination and power. And few had more determination than Voldemort. The confrontation came sooner than expected. During their end-of-year exams, Harry's scar, normally dormant since Strange had removed the fragment, began prickling uncomfortably. The sensation grew stronger whenever Quirrell was nearby. After finishing their final exam, Harry, Ron, and Hermione visited Hagrid, who inadvertently revealed another crucial piece of information. He told a hooded stranger in the pub how to get past Fluffy, the three-headed dog guarding the stone. "We need to tell Dumbledore right away," Hermione insisted as they raced back to the castle. But the headmaster had been called to London on urgent ministry business. With McGonagall dismissing their concerns, Harry made a decision. "We have to go through the trapdoor ourselves. Tonight." "Are you mental?" Ron exclaimed. "We're first years." "I've had additional training," Harry reminded him. "And we can't let Voldemort get the stone. This isn't about school rules, it's about stopping him from returning to power." After much debate, Ron and Hermione agreed to help. That night, they slipped past Fluffy using music to lull it to sleep, then dropped through the trapdoor into a series of challenges designed by different professors. First came Professor Sprout's Devil's Snare, a plant that tightened its grip the more you struggled. Hermione's quick thinking and magical fire saved them. Next was Professor Flitwick's challenge, flying keys that had to be caught to open a door. Harry's seeker skills proved invaluable. Professor McGonagall's giant wizard's chess set nearly cost them Ron, who sacrificed himself in the game to let Harry and Hermione continue. Though knocked unconscious, he wasn't seriously injured. Snape's logic puzzle with potions stopped Hermione, as there was only enough potion for one person to continue through the flames. "You're the one who can do this, Harry," she said, hugging him fiercely. "I'll get Ron and send for help. Be careful." Harry drank the potion and stepped through the black flames into the final chamber. There, as he'd suspected, stood not Snape but Quirrell, without a trace of his stutter. "I wondered if I'd be meeting you here, Potter," he said coldly. "I knew it was you," Harry replied, keeping his distance, mind racing through defensive options. The red eyes gave it away. Quirrell laughed. "Observant child. Yes, my master shares my body. A temporary arrangement until I can secure the stone and craft him a new form. Harry's gaze moved to the mirror of Eriste standing in the center of the chamber. Having trouble with Dumbledore's final protection? Silence. Quirrell snapped. He turned to study the mirror. I see myself presenting the stone to my master, but how do I actually get it? Use the boy, came a high, cold voice that seemed to emanate from Quirrell himself. Quirrell beckoned Harry forward. Look in the mirror, Potter. Tell me what you see. Harry approached cautiously, reaching out with his magical senses. As he stood before the mirror, he saw his reflection smile, reach into its pocket, and pull out a blood-red stone. The reflection winked and put the stone back, and Harry felt the real stone drop into his actual pocket. Well? Quirrell demanded. What do you see? Harry drew on his occlumency training, shielding his thoughts. I see myself shaking hands with Dumbledore. I've won the House Cup. He lies, hissed the cold voice. Let me speak to him, face to face. Master, you are not strong enough. I have strength enough for this. To Harry's horror, Quirrell began unwrapping his turban. Turning around, he revealed a terrible face protruding from the back of his head, chalk white with glaring red eyes and slits for nostrils, like a snake. Harry Potter, whispered Voldemort. See what I have become. Mere shadow and vapor, forced to share another's body. But once I have the elixir of life, I can create a body of my own. As Voldemort spoke, Harry assessed his options. His wand was ready, but he also prepared mystical defenses, gathering dimensional energy in his free hand, hidden behind his back. Why fight me, Harry? Voldemort continued. Your parents died begging for mercy. You're lying, Harry said calmly. My father died protecting my mother and me. My mother died protecting me. Their sacrifice created magic you still don't understand. Voldemort's face contorted with rage. There is no good or evil, only power and those too weak to seek it. Now give me the stone. Seize him. Voldemort screamed. Quirrell lunged forward. As his hands closed around Harry's throat, something extraordinary happened. Quirrell's skin blistered and burned where it contacted Harry's. It burns. Master, I cannot touch him. Quirrell shrieked, pulling back his smoking fingers. Then kill him, fool. Voldemort commanded. As Quirrell raised his wand, Harry acted. With his wand, he cast a disarming charm, but simultaneously, with his free hand, he formed a mystic shield that deflected Quirrell's hastily cast curse. The combination of magical styles created an unexpected effect. The disarming charm, enhanced by dimensional energy, not only knocked Quirrell's wand away but physically flung the professor backwards into the wall with tremendous force. Quirrell slumped, dazed but conscious. Voldemort's face twisted in fury. What magic is this? He hissed. No first year could. Harry didn't wait for him to finish. Charging forward, he pressed his hands directly to Quirrell's face, acting on instinct. The protection his mother's sacrifice had created, combined with his own magical abilities, caused Quirrell's skin to blister and crack wherever Harry touched him. Quirrell screamed in agony while Voldemort shrieked commands. Harry held on, even as his scar exploded with pain and his vision blurred. He could feel Quirrell's body crumbling beneath his hands, turning to ash. With a final wail, Quirrell collapsed. A smoky wraith rose from the body, Voldemort's spirit, forced out as its host died. The wraith howled in frustrated rage, then plunged through Harry's chest. The pain was excruciating. Harry felt his consciousness slipping, darkness closing in. With his remaining strength, he activated the emergency signal on Wong's communication stone. The last thing he saw was a golden portal opening nearby, Strange rushing through, his cloak of levitation billowing behind him. Then darkness claimed him. Harry woke in the hospital wing, sunlight streaming through high windows. Turning his head, he found Dumbledore seated beside his bed. "Good morning, Harry," the headmaster said gently. how are you feeling? Like I fell off a mountain, Harry groaned, pushing himself up. What happened? The stone is safe, Dumbledore assured him. And Professor Quirrell is, regrettably, dead. As for Voldemort, he has once again been denied a physical form. Harry's memories came rushing back. I touched Quirrell, and he disintegrated. Your mother's protection, Dumbledore explained. Her sacrifice left a mark, not a visible one, but one written in your very skin. Love, Harry. Voldemort, who has never understood love, could not touch someone so deeply marked by it. And Doctor Strange? I saw him coming through a portal. Dumbledore smiled. Arrived moments after you lost consciousness. He was most concerned. It took considerable persuasion to convince him you were better recovered here than at his sanctum. He left reluctantly this morning when I promised to personally watch over you. Harry nodded, relieved. Then another thought struck him. Ron and Hermione? Quite well. Mr. Weasley's chest-inflicted injuries were easily mended, and Miss Granger suffered no harm. They'll be relieved to know you've awoken. Harry studied the headmaster. Sir, when I looked in the mirror, I actually got the stone. How was that possible? One of my more brilliant ideas, Dumbledore said, eyes twinkling. Only someone who wanted to find the stone, find it, but not use it, could retrieve it. Someone seeking to use its power would see themselves making gold or drinking the elixir of life. What will happen to the stone now? It has been destroyed, with Nicholas Flamel's agreement. He and his wife have enough elixir to set their affairs in order before they die. Harry absorbed this. So Voldemort can't use it. But he'll find other ways to come back, won't he? Dumbledore's expression grew somber. I fear so, Harry. There are other methods, darker and more terrible. But you have delayed him, bought us valuable time. For that, the wizarding world owes you a great debt. They talked a while longer before Dumbledore left Harry to rest. Soon after, Ron and Hermione burst in, full of questions and exclamations about their adventure. You should have seen Malfoy's face when Gryffindor won the House Cup. Ron crowed. Dumbledore gave us last-minute points for the whole stone business, put us just ahead of Slytherin. And the whole school knows something happened, Hermione added, though the details are all wild rumors. Did you know who really possessed Quirrell all year? Harry confirmed what he could, describing the confrontation but glossing over some details of how he'd fought Quirrell. Some aspects of his mystical abilities were better kept private for now. The end-of-year feast was a triumph for Gryffindor. As Harry looked around the great hall, decorated in scarlet and gold, he felt a deep sense of belonging. Hogwarts had become a second home to him, alongside the Sanctum. The next day, as students prepared to board the Hogwarts Express, Professor McGonagall approached Harry with a sealed letter. From the headmaster, she explained. Regarding your summer arrangements. Harry opened it to find a brief note from Dumbledore. Harry, after consultation with Doctor Strange, we have agreed to a modified summer schedule. You will spend the first month at the New York Sanctum, continuing your mystical education. For the second month, if agreeable to all parties, you might divide your time between the Weasley family, who have kindly extended an invitation, and Hogwarts itself, where I would value your assistance with a special project. This arrangement acknowledges both your unique educational needs and the importance of maintaining connections in both your worlds. Yours sincerely, Albus Dumbledore P.S. I found our conversation about the intersection of magical traditions most stimulating. Perhaps we might continue it this summer. Harry smiled, tucking the letter away. He'd worried about being pulled between his two magical lives, but instead, bridges were being built between them. As the train pulled away from Hogsmeade Station, Harry gazed back at Hogwarts Castle until it disappeared from view. His first year had been extraordinary, dangerous and challenging, but also rewarding. He'd made real friends, confirmed his place in the wizarding world, and even faced Voldemort again. And he'd done it while maintaining his mystical training, beginning to forge his own unique magical path that drew from both traditions. Thinking deep thoughts? Hermione asked, noticing his contemplative expression. Just reflecting, Harry replied. It's been quite a year. Mental, that's what it's been, Ron said, unwrapping a chocolate frog. Wonder what next year will bring. Harry smiled. Whatever came next, he'd face it with the confidence of someone who stood between worlds, drawing strength from both. Something interesting, I'm sure, he said. But first, summer training with Dr. Strange awaits. Will you show us some of what you learn when we see you at the Burrow? Ron asked eagerly. Probably, Harry grinned. At least the parts that won't accidentally open portals to hostile dimensions. As his friends laughed, Harry gazed out the window at the passing countryside. Two worlds of magic, each with their own wonders and challenges. And somehow, he'd found his place in both. Chapter 3, The Convergence of Powers. Harry ducked as a bolt of crimson energy sizzled past his ear, close enough to make his hair stand on end. 13 years old and already fighting for his life, again. The massive creature roared, its 8 eyes glinting as it prepared another attack. Not a spider, not exactly. More like someone had taken a spider, quadrupled its size, given it the ability to shoot energy blasts, and then dropped it into an abstract painting where the laws of physics took a holiday. Strange. Harry called, hands already weaving a defensive pattern. Your brilliant plan. Working on it. Strange shouted from across the dimensional pocket where they were trapped. The Sorcerer Supreme was holding back the creature's larger companion with a series of mystical barriers that crackled and strained under the assault. Harry rolled left as the spider thing pounced, narrowly avoiding being crushed. His hands completed the gesture, and a glowing lasso of golden energy wrapped around the creature's legs. Harry pulled with both magical strength and physical effort, toppling the monster onto its back. Not wasting the advantage, he drew his wand with his right hand while maintaining the mystical binding with his left, a technique he'd perfected over 2 years of dual training. Petrificus Totalis. Harry called, pushing his magical core into the spell with precise control. The spell hit the creature's underbelly, but instead of freezing completely, the beast shuddered as the two magical systems interacted. The wizard's spell, designed for beings from Harry's dimension, only partially affected this extra-dimensional entity. Still, it slowed the creature enough for Harry to strengthen his mystical bindings. Strange. Harry called again, sweat beading on his forehead as he maintained the dual magical assault. A little help would be great. Strange completed a complex series of gestures, and a portal opened beneath his opponent, dropping it into what looked like an endless void. With his foe temporarily dealt with, he turned to assist Harry. Together, they contained the spider creature in a binding spell that combined wizarding and mystical elements, Strange providing the dimensional anchors while Harry supplied the magical core that gave the spell its potency against the creature's natural resistance. Portals ready, Strange announced, his hands creating the familiar circular gateway. Let's send our friend home. With a final push of combined magic, they forced the creature through the portal, which Strange snapped shut with a flick of his wrist. Harry bent over, hands on his knees, catching his breath. That was intense. And exactly why we practice in controlled environments, Strange replied, though there was pride in his voice. Your combination of spell types was innovative, not what I would have done, but effective. I'm getting better at switching between traditions, Harry said, straightening up and adjusting his glasses. The transition isn't as jarring anymore. Strange nodded approvingly. Your magical core has matured significantly this past year. The foundations we built during your early training are paying dividends now. They stood in the mirror dimension, their preferred training ground when Harry was home from Hogwarts. Here, they could practice the most dangerous spells without affecting the real world, and contain the occasional extra-dimensional visitor that Strange conjured for training purposes. That's enough for today, Strange decided. You'll need your energy for tomorrow. Don't remind me, Harry groaned. 13-hour flight to London, surrounded by muggles who'll ask why I'm not in school. Strange's lips twitched. You know I offered to portal you directly to platform 9 3/4. And missed the stopover in Iceland? No way, Harry grinned. Besides, Wong insists that occasionally doing things the normal way builds character. Wong says many things, Strange replied dryly. Most of them involving patience I apparently lack. They exited the mirror dimension back into the New York Sanctum's main hall. After 2 years splitting his education between Hogwarts and the Sanctum, Harry moved between the worlds with comfortable familiarity. The ancient artifacts and shifting architecture of the Sanctum felt as much like home as Hogwarts' moving staircases and talking portraits. Wong appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. You're late for dinner. Again. Interdimensional spider crisis, Harry explained, trying to look serious. Wong remained unimpressed. Wash up. I made dumplings, and they're getting cold. As Wong disappeared back toward the kitchen, Harry caught Strange's eye, and they both suppressed smiles. Wong's gruff exterior hid genuine affection, expressed primarily through food and increasingly complex magical texts that happened to address whatever challenges Harry was currently facing. Later, over dinner, Strange grew more serious. Harry, we need to discuss something before you return to Hogwarts. Harry looked up from his dumplings, instantly alert. He'd learned to recognize that tone, it meant trouble was brewing. I've detected dimensional disturbances centered around Britain, Strange continued. Not random fluctuations, but patterns that suggest deliberate tampering. Voldemort? Harry asked immediately. Possibly. The energy signatures have similarities to what we extracted from your scar, but there's more to it. As if something is weakening the boundaries between dimensions specifically around magical Britain. Harry considered this. Could it be related to the Dementors? Dumbledore wrote that the Ministry is posting them around Hogwarts because of Sirius Black's escape. Possibly. Dementors exist partially outside normal dimensional space, it's what makes them so difficult to combat with standard magic. But this feels different. More coordinated. Wong placed another dumpling on Harry's plate. The Sanctum's libraries mention similar disturbances during the rise of previous dark wizards. They often seek power beyond their tradition, dabbling in forces they don't understand. Great, Harry sighed. Just what we need, Voldemort with access to other dimensions. It may not be that dire, Strange cautioned. But stay vigilant. Your sensitivity to dimensional energies has grown substantially. You'll likely notice things others at Hogwarts cannot. Harry nodded, already mentally preparing for yet another year of mysterious threats. His first 2 years had hardly been normal, from the Philosopher's Stone to the Chamber of Secrets and the basilisk that nearly killed him. Without his mystical training supplementing his wizarding education, he might not have survived either encounter. There's more, Strange added. The ancient protective spells around Britain's magical locations are showing signs of strain. Including those at Hogwarts. But Hogwarts is supposed to be impenetrable, Harry objected. No defense is perfect, Wong interjected. Especially against attacks it wasn't designed to repel. Hogwarts founders were brilliant wizards, but they didn't account for threats from beyond conventional dimensions. Which is why, Strange concluded, your presence there may be more important than ever. You understand both worlds in a way few others can. Harry felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders, a familiar sensation, but never comfortable. I'll keep my eyes open. And I've been teaching Ron and Hermione some basic mystical concepts. Nothing dangerous, he added quickly, seeing Wong's expression. Just fundamentals. Good, Strange approved. Allies with even rudimentary understanding could be crucial if the situation deteriorates. Later that night, as Harry finished packing his trunk for the return to Hogwarts, he found himself staring at his reflection in the mirror. At 13, he'd grown several inches, though he remained more wiry than bulky. His lightning scar, dormant since Strange had removed the soul fragment 6 years ago, was now barely visible beneath his messy black hair. But it was his eyes that showed the most change, still brilliantly green like his mother's, but with a depth and awareness that spoke of experiences far beyond his years. The boy from the cupboard under the stairs was long gone, replaced by someone who straddled multiple worlds and magical traditions with increasing confidence. Someone knocked at his door. "Come in," Harry called. Wong entered, carrying a small wooden box. "A gift for your journey." Harry accepted it curiously. Inside lay an amulet, simple in design, a flat disc of what looked like bronze with intricate symbols etched around its circumference. "It's beautiful," Harry said, lifting it by its chain. "Magical?" "Naturally," Wong replied. "It heightens awareness of dimensional disturbances and provides limited protection against them. Nothing flashy, nothing that would attract attention at school." Harry slipped it over his head, feeling the metal warm slightly against his skin. "Thanks, Wong." "Really?" Wong nodded, his expression softening slightly. "You face unusual challenges, balancing these worlds. But remember, that unique perspective is also your greatest strength." Coming from Wong, this qualified as an emotionally effusive speech. Harry smiled, genuinely touched. "I'll remember," he promised. "And I'll practice my Tibetan mantras on the plane." Wong almost smiled. "See that you do. Your pronunciation of the fifth sequence is still atrocious." King's Cross Station bustled with the usual September 1st chaos, families saying goodbye, students reuniting after summer holidays, trolleys loaded with trunks and owl cages navigating through crowds of oblivious muggles. Harry pushed his cart toward the barrier between platforms 9 and 10, scanning the crowd for familiar faces. His flight had landed at Heathrow with just enough time to make it to the station before the Hogwarts Express departed. "Harry! Over here!" He turned to see Hermione waving enthusiastically, her bushy hair even more voluminous than he remembered. Ron stood beside her, sporting a spectacular tan and having grown at least 3 inches over the summer. "You made it!" Hermione exclaimed, hugging him tightly. "We weren't sure if you'd catch the train after your Muggle flight. Strange offered to portal me directly, but I wanted the full experience," Harry explained, accepting a friendly punch on the shoulder from Ron. "Mental," Ron grinned. "Taking planes when you could just step through a magic door." "Honestly, Ron," Hermione huffed, though without real annoyance, "experiencing different ways of travel broadens your perspective." "Speaking of perspectives," Harry said quietly as they moved toward the platform barrier, "there are some things we need to talk about on the train. New developments." His serious tone wasn't lost on his friends. After 2 years of facing dangers together, they recognized when Harry had important information to share. They passed through the barrier onto platform 9 3/4, where the Scarlet Hogwarts Express waited, billowing steam. The platform was even more crowded than usual, with parents hovering anxiously near their children, a reflection of the concerns about Sirius Black's escape from Azkaban. "Dad says the ministry's in an uproar," Ron commented as they loaded their trunks. "No one's ever broken out before. They've got Aurors and Dementors searching everywhere." Finding an empty compartment near the back of the train, they settled in for the journey. Once the train pulled away from the station, Harry cast a privacy charm on the door, one of the more useful spells he'd picked up from his advanced reading. "So what's going on?" Hermione asked immediately. "You look worried." Harry explained Strange's detection of dimensional disturbances around Britain and his concerns about weakening magical barriers. "But what does that actually mean?" Ron frowned. "Like, holes to other worlds or something?" "Not exactly holes," Harry clarified. "More like, thinning. Places where the boundaries between dimensions aren't as solid as they should be." "And Strange thinks it could be connected to Voldemort?" Hermione asked, ignoring Ron's wince at the name. Harry nodded. "Or his followers. Maybe even this Sirius Black situation, though that seems unlikely given the timing." "Could it be natural?" Hermione suggested. "Magical flux or something cyclical?" "Strange doesn't think so. The patterns suggest deliberate manipulation. Ron looked troubled. So on top of a murderous escaped prisoner, we might have to deal with dimensional what's-its this year? Brilliant. Hence why I want to step up our side practice, Harry said, lowering his voice further despite the privacy charm. You've both done really well with the basic mystical concepts I've shown you. I think it's time we move to more practical applications. Hermione leaned forward eagerly. Like what you did against the basilisk last year? That golden shield that deflected its gaze? Something like that, Harry nodded. But starting smaller. Techniques to sense magical disturbances, basic protections against dimensional intrusion. Will we get in trouble? Ron asked. I mean, isn't there some rule against mixing magic types? Not a rule so much as tradition, Harry explained. The magical communities separated centuries ago and developed differently. There's no actual law against learning both approaches. Their discussion was interrupted when the train suddenly began to slow, then stopped completely. The lamps flickered out, plunging them into darkness. We can't be there yet, Hermione whispered. Harry felt it immediately, a cold that went beyond temperature, seeping into his bones, his thoughts. His amulet from Wong grew ice-cold against his chest. Dementors, he said grimly, drawing his wand. And something else. The cold intensified. Outside their compartment, something moved in the corridor, a tall, cloaked figure gliding toward their door. But what alarmed Harry more was what his mystical senses detected. The Dementor's presence was creating a small dimensional rift in its wake, like reality itself was fraying around the creature. Harry's amulet pulsed, attempting to shield him from the effect. He quickly touched it with his free hand, channeling his own magic through the mystical artifact to extend its protection to Ron and Hermione. The compartment door slid open. The Dementor hovered there, its faceless hood turning toward Harry. The cold became unbearable, and Harry heard what his friends couldn't, a distant tearing sound, like fabric ripping, as the dimensional boundary weakened further. Without thinking, Harry combined techniques. With his wand, he began the motion for the Patronus charm he'd been practicing, while his free hand traced a mystical sealing gesture Strange had taught him specifically for dimensional breaches. Expecto Patronum, he called, focusing on his happiest memories, coming to live with Strange, making friends at Hogwarts, flying free on his broom. Silver light erupted from his wand, not yet a fully formed Patronus but strong enough to push the Dementor back. Simultaneously, golden energy sparked from his other hand, invisible to most but reinforcing the thinning dimensional boundary around the dark creature. The Dementor retreated, and the lights flickered back on. Harry slumped back in his seat, exhausted by the dual magical effort. What did you just do? Hermione whispered, her face pale. Combination approach, Harry explained between deep breaths. The Patronus dealt with the Dementor itself, while I used mystical energy to repair the dimensional damage it was causing. There was dimensional damage? Ron looked alarmed. I didn't see anything. You wouldn't, Harry said, touching Wong's amulet gratefully. Not without training or magical assistance. But the Dementors, they're making whatever is happening worse, whether they mean to or not. The compartment door slid open again, revealing a tired-looking man with prematurely graying hair. Is everyone all right in here? He asked, his eyes lingering on Harry with an unreadable expression. Professor Lupin, I presume. Harry said, recognizing him from Dumbledore's letter mentioning the new defense against the dark arts teacher. Lupin looked surprised. Yes. And you're Harry Potter. It wasn't a question. He pulled a large chocolate bar from his pocket, breaking off pieces. Here, eat this. It helps counteract the effects of Dementors. Harry accepted the chocolate, noting how Lupin's eyes flickered to his hand that had been channeling mystical energy just moments before. Interesting, could the professor sense something about the non-wizarding magic he'd used? That was impressive spell work, Lupin commented casually. Not many third years can produce even a partial Patronus. Just lucky, Harry shrugged, not mentioning his additional training. Lupin didn't look convinced but didn't press further. Rest. We'll be at Hogwarts soon. He left to check on other students. He knows something, Hermione said once Lupin was gone. The way he was looking at you. Maybe, Harry agreed. But he doesn't seem hostile, just curious. Actually, he reminds me a bit of Professor McGonagall, observant but discreet. The remainder of the journey passed without incident, though Harry remained on alert, monitoring the dimensional energies around the train through Wong's amulet. What he sensed troubled him, fluctuations that shouldn't exist, patterns that suggested the Dementors were unintentionally exacerbating an existing problem. As the Hogwarts Express pulled into Hogsmeade Station, Harry came to a decision. He needed to inform Dumbledore about what he'd sensed, and soon. The Great Hall's enchanted ceiling reflected a stormy sky as students gathered for the welcoming feast. Harry, seated between Ron and Hermione at the Gryffindor table, kept his magical senses extended, monitoring the castle's energies while appearing to focus on the sorting ceremony. Dumbledore's welcome speech confirmed the Dementors' presence as security against Sirius Black. His warning about their dangerous nature was pointed, they do not distinguish between the one they hunt and the one who gets in their way. He doesn't sound happy about them being here, Hermione whispered. He's not, Harry confirmed. I can feel the castle's magic pushing against them, keeping them at the boundaries. Hogwarts itself doesn't want them here. Ron looked skeptical. You talk about the castle like it's alive. It is, in its way, Harry replied. Not conscious like you or me, but aware. The founders built that awareness into the very stones. After the feast, Harry requested a meeting with Dumbledore through Professor McGonagall, who gave him a knowing look but arranged it without question. His reputation for bringing legitimate concerns to the headmaster had been well established over the previous 2 years. Dumbledore received him in his office later that evening, blue eyes twinkling behind half-moon spectacles. Harry, welcome back to Hogwarts. I trust your summer training with Dr. Strange was productive. Very, sir. That's partly why I needed to speak with you. Harry touched Wong's amulet. I'm detecting dimensional disturbances around Britain, centered particularly strongly around Hogwarts and other magical locations. Dumbledore's expression grew serious. Indeed. That aligns with certain observations I've made recently. Please, elaborate on what you're sensing. Harry described what he'd detected on the train and since arriving at the castle, the thinning boundaries, the way the Dementors seemed to intensify the effect, the pattern suggesting deliberate manipulation. Most concerning, Dumbledore agreed when Harry finished. Especially your observation about the Dementors. I opposed their placement here, but the Ministry insisted. Now it seems they may be inadvertently contributing to a problem they don't even recognize. Dr. Strange believes someone might be attempting to access power from other dimensions, Harry added. Possibly connected to Voldemort or his followers. Dumbledore steepled his fingers, considering. A reasonable hypothesis. Tom Riddle always sought power beyond traditional boundaries. He studied Harry for a moment. I'm curious, how would you address this situation, given your unique perspective on magical traditions? Harry thought carefully before answering. I'd start by mapping the disturbances, identifying patterns and potential focal points. Then establish monitoring and containment where the boundaries are weakest. Both wizarding wards and mystical seals working in concert would be more effective than either alone. A sound approach, Dumbledore nodded approvingly. Would you be willing to assist with this? Your sensitivity to these phenomena, combined with your dual training, makes you uniquely qualified. Of course, sir. I've already started teaching Ron and Hermione some basic techniques for sensing and responding to dimensional anomalies. Dumbledore's eyebrows rose slightly. Expanding your circle of practitioners. Interesting. The traditional separation between wizarding and mystical communities has long struck me as artificial and limiting. Dr. Strange says the same thing, Harry smiled. He believes the challenges ahead may require combining approaches that have been kept separate for too long. Wise words, Dumbledore mused. Perhaps I should arrange another conversation with the good doctor. Our last exchange of ideas was most stimulating. They spent the next hour developing a plan. Harry would monitor the dimensional energies around Hogwarts, reporting changes to both Dumbledore and Strange. The headmaster, meanwhile, would work to limit the Dementors' movement and research ancient Hogwarts defenses that might be adapted to address dimensional weaknesses. As Harry prepared to leave, Dumbledore asked, "And what of Sirius Black, Harry? Has Doctor Strange shared his thoughts on that situation?" "Only that the timing seems suspicious," Harry replied. "A high-profile escape drawing Ministry resources and attention, just as these dimensional disturbances are increasing." "A reasonable observation," Dumbledore said thoughtfully. "Though I suspect there may be more to Sirius Black's story than is commonly known. Keep an open mind, Harry. Not all is as it appears in that particular case." Harry nodded, filing away this cryptic comment for later consideration. With Dumbledore, there were often layers of meaning beneath seemingly casual remarks. Classes began the next day, with the third-year schedules now including electives. Harry had chosen care of magical creatures and divination, partly out of interest and partly because they offered potential insights into magical phenomena from different perspectives. Divination, with Professor Trelawney, proved less useful than he'd hoped. Her dramatic predictions of Harry's doom aside, the class seemed focused more on performance than the genuine art of foresight. Strange had explained that true seers were rare, but that certain meditative techniques could enhance natural intuition and sensitivity to probable futures. Trelawney's approach, with its rigid adherence to specific methods and interpretations, seemed almost designed to discourage actual insight. Care of magical creatures proved more interesting, especially once Hagrid introduced them to Buckbeak the Hippogriff. Harry's respectful approach to the proud creature earned him a flight around the grounds, an exhilarating experience that ended abruptly when Malfoy provoked Buckbeak and was subsequently injured. "That's going to cause problems," Harry muttered to Ron and Hermione as they watched Hagrid carrying Malfoy to the castle, the Slytherin's complaints echoing across the grounds. "His father will hear about this," Ron mimicked. "Bloody Git did it on purpose, didn't listen to Hagrid's warnings." "Politics," Harry sighed, thinking of Strange's lessons on navigating complex situations. "We'll need to support Hagrid when Lucius Malfoy inevitably demands consequences." Defense against the dark arts, however, proved to be the most valuable class. Professor Lupin was competent and engaging, focusing on practical applications rather than just theory. His lesson on boggarts, creatures that transformed into one's worst fear, gave Harry an unexpected insight. When Harry stepped forward to face the boggart, he expected to see Voldemort or perhaps a Dementor. Instead, the creature shifted into a swirling vortex of darkness, shot through with crimson lightning, a dimensional rift, tearing reality itself apart. "Ridiculous!" Harry called, forcing humor into the visualization. The rift transformed into a child's pop-up book, dimensional tears becoming colorful paper cutouts that harmlessly folded back into the pages. Afterward, Lupin held Harry back as the class filed out. "An unusual fear," he commented. "Most people see something more conventional." Harry shrugged. "I've seen things that don't fit conventional categories, Professor." "Yes, I imagine you have," Lupin said with surprising understanding. "Your guardian is quite renowned in certain circles." Harry studied Lupin carefully. "You know about Dr. Strange?" "I make it my business to be well informed about different magical traditions," Lupin replied. "Though I admit, the mystical arts remain somewhat outside my expertise." He paused, then added, "Your mother was similarly interested in magical approaches beyond standard wizarding practice." This caught Harry by surprise. "She was?" Lupin smiled warmly. "Lily was brilliantly curious. Never satisfied with being told something was impossible or forbidden without understanding why. She would have approved of your expanded education, I think." Over the following weeks, Lupin became something of a mentor to Harry, offering additional training in defensive magic and sharing occasional stories about Harry's parents. The professor never directly asked about Harry's mystical training, but sometimes made space in conversations where Harry could share if he chose to. Meanwhile, Harry continued monitoring the dimensional disturbances around Hogwarts. Wong's amulet proved invaluable, allowing him to track subtle changes and map patterns of instability. He established a regular communication schedule with Strange, updating him on developments while receiving guidance on containment techniques. "The fluctuations are increasing," Harry reported during one such communication in mid-October. "Especially around the Forbidden Forest and the lake. And there's something else, they seem to intensify during heightened emotional states among the student body." Strange's miniaturized face in the communication stone looked troubled. "That suggests the boundaries are responding to magical output, not just deliberate manipulation. Mass emotional energy can create magical surges that stress dimensional fabric." Like during Quidditch matches, Harry realized. Hundreds of magical children experiencing intense emotions simultaneously. Precisely. Monitor the next match closely. If my theory is correct, you'll see localized spikes in dimensional instability. Strange's prediction proved accurate. During Gryffindor's stormy match against Hufflepuff, Harry's amulet grew painfully cold as the crowd's excitement peaked. Worse, Dementors invaded the pitch, drawn to the emotional energy. The combination, emotional magic, Dementors' dimensional effects, and the already weakened boundaries, created a perfect storm. 50 feet above the pitch, Harry's Nimbus 2000 suddenly juddered beneath him. Through the driving rain, he glimpsed what others couldn't see, reality rippling around the approaching Dementors, small tears opening in the dimensional fabric. Harry was reaching for his wand when one of these tears expanded directly in his flight path. His broom, passing through the distortion, shuddered violently and began to disintegrate, the magical enchantments unraveling as conflicting dimensional energies interfered with them. He fell. The crowd's screams intensified as Harry plummeted toward the ground. In that moment of crisis, his dual training activated almost instinctively. With one hand, he made the gesture for mystical flight that Strange had taught him, with the other, he drew his wand and cast Arresto Momentum. The combination slowed his fall significantly, but wasn't enough to stop it completely. He hit the ground hard, pain lancing through his shoulder and leg, but the impact was survivable rather than fatal. As consciousness faded, he was aware of two things: Dumbledore's fury as he drove away the Dementors with a powerful Patronus, and a small tear in reality slowly closing above where his broom had disintegrated. Dimensional intrusion during a school Quidditch match, Strange's voice was tight with controlled anger as he spoke through the communication stone. "This is escalating faster than anticipated." Harry, propped up in the hospital wing with his leg and shoulder healing, kept his voice low to avoid being overheard by Madame Pomfrey. It wasn't targeted, more like collateral damage from multiple factors converging. "But yes, it's getting worse. I'm coming to Hogwarts," Strange decided. "This requires direct intervention. The sealing techniques I've been teaching you remotely won't be sufficient if full breaches are beginning to form. Dumbledore's already strengthening the castle wards," Harry informed him. "And he's restricted the Dementors further from the grounds after what happened." "Good, but not enough. Traditional wizarding protections aren't designed for dimensional threats." After ending the communication, Harry leaned back against his pillows, contemplating the intensifying situation. His friends, who'd been taking turns sitting with him, had stepped out momentarily, giving him privacy for the call. The hospital wing door opened, and Harry expected to see Ron or Hermione returning. Instead, Professor Lupin entered, carrying a large piece of chocolate and looking concerned. "How are you feeling, Harry?" he asked, placing the chocolate on Harry's bedside table. "Better, thanks. Madame Pomfrey says I'll be out tomorrow." Lupin nodded, then lowered his voice. "I saw what happened during your fall. Not just the Dementors, but the distortion in the air where your broom failed." Harry tensed slightly. "You could see that?" "Not clearly, but enough to know something beyond normal magic was occurring." Lupin's eyes held a knowing look. "I have certain sensitivities to magical disruptions. Part of my condition." Condition? Harry repeated. Lupin hesitated, then sat on the edge of the visitor's chair. I'm a werewolf, Harry. Dumbledore knows, of course, and takes precautions. But it gives me heightened senses for certain types of magical phenomena, especially as the full moon approaches. Harry absorbed this revelation, understanding now why Lupin always looked ill around the same time each month. Thank you for trusting me with that, Professor. Dumbledore mentioned you're working with him on monitoring certain anomalies around the school, Lupin continued. If my senses can be of any assistance, I'm at your disposal. I owe that much to your parents. You knew them well? Harry asked, always eager for genuine insights about James and Lily. Your father was one of my best friends, Lupin said with a sad smile. Along with Sirius Black and Peter Pettigrew. We called ourselves the Marauders, quite the troublemakers in our day. Harry sat up straighter, wincing as his shoulder protested. You were friends with Sirius Black. The escaped prisoner everyone's looking for. Lupin's expression grew pained. Yes. Before what happened. It's still difficult to reconcile the Sirius I knew with what he allegedly did. Allegedly? Harry picked up on the qualifier immediately. Choice of words, Lupin said quickly. Old habits of loyalty die hard. But something in his eyes suggested more, doubt, perhaps, about the official story. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Ron and Hermione, returning with smuggled treats from the kitchen. Lupin excused himself, but not before giving Harry a significant look that suggested they would continue their discussion later. What was that about? Ron asked once Lupin had left. Multiple things, Harry replied, lowering his voice. Lupin can sense the dimensional disturbances. He was friends with my parents and Sirius Black, and he's a werewolf. Hermione gasped. A werewolf? Teaching at Hogwarts? Dumbledore knows, Harry assured her. And from what I've seen, Lupin is perfectly safe and competent. His condition doesn't define him. That actually explains a lot, Hermione mused. His absences around the full moon, the subjects of his recent lessons on recognizing and accommodating those with magical conditions. But what about the Black connection? Ron pressed. That's more concerning, isn't it? If he was mates with the bloke trying to kill you? I'm not convinced that is what Black's after, Harry said thoughtfully. Dumbledore hinted there might be more to the story, and now Lupin seems uncertain about Black's guilt. But everyone knows Black betrayed your parents to you-know-who. Ron protested. Everyone knows a lot of things that aren't necessarily true, Harry pointed out. Remember how everyone knew I was the heir of Slytherin last year? I want facts, not rumors. What are you planning? Hermione asked, recognizing the determined look in Harry's eye. Research, for now, Harry replied. And Dr. Strange is coming to Hogwarts soon to help with the dimensional issues. Maybe he can shed some light on the Black situation too. Strange arrived at Hogwarts 2 days later, creating quite a stir when he opened a portal directly into the entrance hall during lunch hour. Students gaped as the Sorcerer Supreme stepped through, his cloak of levitation billowing dramatically despite the absence of wind. Dumbledore, seemingly unsurprised by the unconventional arrival, rose from the staff table and greeted Strange warmly. Dr. Strange, welcome to Hogwarts once again. Your timing is impeccable, the pumpkin pie has just been served. The two powerful practitioners retired to Dumbledore's office for private consultation, while whispers erupted throughout the Great Hall. That's Harry Potter's guardian. Did you see that cape? It was moving by itself. Is he really a doctor? Of what? Harry, used to the attention that followed Strange, continued eating calmly while fielding questions from curious classmates. Malfoy, at the Slytherin table, looked both disdainful and unsettled by the display of unfamiliar magic. That evening, Harry joined Strange and Dumbledore in the headmaster's office for a strategy session. Professor McGonagall and Lupin were also present, Dumbledore having brought them into his confidence regarding the dimensional concerns. The situation is more severe than I initially assessed, Strange announced, projecting a mystical display showing Hogwarts and its grounds overlaid with glowing patterns representing dimensional stability. Red areas indicated weaknesses, and there were more of them than Harry had detected. The castle's foundational wards are admirably resilient, Strange continued, but they weren't designed for this type of incursion. We need to establish additional protections that specifically address dimensional instability. What do you propose? McGonagall asked, studying the display with a critical eye. A hybrid approach, Strange replied. Combining traditional wizarding wards with mystical seals at key intersection points. Harry has already identified several locations where the boundaries are particularly vulnerable. Harry stepped forward, indicating specific areas on the display. The highest concentration is near the edge of the Forbidden Forest, with secondary weaknesses near the lake and, interestingly, the Room of Requirement on the 7th floor. The come-and-go room? Dumbledore looked intrigued. Fascinating. Its inherent spatial manipulation might naturally attract dimensional instability. Or be causing it, Strange suggested. Spaces that magically reconfigure themselves create stress on dimensional boundaries. They developed a plan to establish protective measures around the castle. Strange would handle the most complex mystical seals, while Harry would assist with the integration between mystical and wizarding magic. Dumbledore and McGonagall would adapt Hogwarts' existing wards to complement these new defenses, while Lupin would use his heightened senses to patrol and identify new weaknesses as they emerged. What of the Dementors? Lupin asked. They clearly exacerbate the problem. I've requested their removal, Dumbledore said, but Minister Fudge remains adamant about their necessity for capturing Black. Perhaps we can establish a buffer, Harry suggested. A dimensional stabilizer that prevents their natural disruption from affecting the broader pattern. Strange nodded approvingly. Good thinking. We can create anchor points that localize their effect without removing them entirely. Political compromise with magical reinforcement. The implementation began immediately. For the next several days, Harry divided his time between classes and assisting Strange with establishing protections. They worked primarily during evenings and early mornings, when fewer students would notice their activities. Ron and Hermione often accompanied them, helping with simpler tasks and learning more about dimensional magic in the process. Hermione proved particularly adept at understanding the theoretical underpinnings, while Ron showed unexpected talent for identifying practical applications. It's like wizard's chess, he explained when Harry commented on his insights. Seeing patterns, anticipating how different forces interact. Just applied to magic instead of chess pieces. During one such session near the Forbidden Forest, they encountered an unexpected observer, Draco Malfoy, watching from behind a tree as they established a seal at a particularly unstable location. Spying, Malfoy? Ron challenged, spotting him first. Malfoy stepped out, trying to look unintimidated despite facing Strange in full Sorcerer Supreme mode. I'm not spying. I'm on public school grounds. At midnight? Hermione raised an eyebrow. I could ask you the same question, Granger, Malfoy retorted, but his heart wasn't in it. His attention remained fixed on the glowing mystical seal Strange was creating. What is that magic? It's not normal. Something in his tone caught Harry's attention, not the usual derision, but genuine curiosity tinged with concern. It's dimensional magic, Harry explained, making a split-second decision for honesty. We're reinforcing weakened boundaries between our reality and others. Malfoy frowned. Because of the Dementors? Partly, Harry acknowledged. They're making an existing problem worse. Strange, finishing the seal, turned his attention to the Slytherin boy. You can sense it, can't you? The instability. Malfoy looked startled, then reluctantly nodded. Since the start of term. Strange dreams. Seeing things that shouldn't be there, especially near the forest. He glanced at Harry. I thought Potter might be responsible, with his unusual training. Not responsible, Harry corrected, but trying to fix it. Some people are more sensitive to dimensional anomalies than others. You appear to be one of them. Malfoy absorbed this, clearly torn between his habitual antagonism and genuine concern about what he'd been experiencing. My father says mixing magical traditions weakens our heritage, he said, almost reflexively. Your father, Strange replied calmly, is entitled to his opinion. But magical knowledge isn't strengthened by isolation, it's enhanced through understanding different approaches to similar problems. Like diseases, Malfoy said unexpectedly. Different healing traditions might approach them differently, but understanding multiple methods gives more treatment options. At their surprised looks, he added defensively, my mother studied healing before she married. Harry realized there might be more complexity to Draco Malfoy than he'd previously acknowledged. If you're genuinely interested in understanding what's happening, we could use another person with natural sensitivity. Ron looked like he might object, but Hermione elbowed him subtly. Malfoy hesitated, conflict evident on his face. I'll think about it, he finally said. But don't expect me to suddenly join Potter's fan club. Wouldn't dream of it, Harry replied with a slight smile. As Malfoy departed, Harry turned to Strange. Was that wise? Potentially, Strange said thoughtfully. Natural sensitivity is rare and valuable. And sometimes, Harry, the most unlikely allies prove the most significant. The dimensional protections appeared to be working. Over the next few weeks, Wong's amulet detected fewer fluctuations, and existing weaknesses showed signs of stabilizing. Strange, satisfied with their progress, prepared to return to the New York Sanctum. The seals will need maintenance, he instructed Harry the night before his departure. Monthly reinforcement at minimum, more frequently if you detect significant changes. I've got it covered, Harry assured him. And Lupin's agreed to help monitor between reinforcements. Strange nodded approvingly. He's a good ally, knowledgeable, discreet, and genuinely concerned for your welfare. He hesitated, then added, I've been researching Sirius Black while I've been here. And? Harry prompted when Strange paused. The official story has inconsistencies. Black was imprisoned without trial during the chaos following Voldemort's fall. The evidence against him was circumstantial, primarily witness testimony about an explosion that killed Peter Pettigrew and 12 Muggles. But you're not convinced? Let's say I have questions, Strange replied carefully. Particularly about why Black would wait 12 years to escape if killing you was his goal. And why he hasn't made any attempt to approach Hogwarts despite the obvious Dementor presence. Lupin seems doubtful about his guilt too, Harry mentioned. Said Black was one of my father's best friends, along with Pettigrew. Friendship makes betrayal both more painful and more difficult to believe, Strange observed. Keep an open mind, but maintain vigilance. If Black does attempt to contact you, use extreme caution. That night, after Strange departed, Harry found himself restless. Despite the late hour, he decided to take a walk through the castle under his invisibility cloak, finding comfort in the familiar corridors and ancient magic surrounding him. Near the one-eyed witch statue on the 3rd floor, he noticed a magical disturbance, not dimensional, but something else. Drawing his wand, he approached cautiously, extending his mystical senses. A large, black dog emerged from the shadows, regarding him with intelligent eyes. Harry froze, recognizing it as matching the description of the Grim he'd allegedly seen several times since term began. You're not a death omen, are you? Harry said quietly, studying the creature. Its magical aura was strange, not quite animal, with patterns suggesting something more complex. The dog tilted its head, then deliberately turned and padded down the corridor, looking back as if expecting Harry to follow. Intrigued and wary, Harry did so, keeping a discreet distance and maintaining magical awareness for any threat. The dog led him to an unused classroom, slipped inside, and waited. When Harry entered, he found not a dog but a gaunt, haunted-looking man with long, matted hair and hollow eyes. Sirius Black. Harry's wand came up instantly, but he didn't cast. That's a neat trick, he said calmly, despite his racing heart. Animagus transformation. Unregistered, I'm guessing. Black looked surprised at Harry's composed reaction. You're not afraid. Cautious, Harry corrected. But I've been wondering when you'd approach me. The question is, why now? Black's haunted face showed confusion. You expected me? I expected someone would try to fill the gaps in the story I've been told, Harry replied. Lupin's uncertainty. Dumbledore's hints. Strange research showing inconsistencies in your case. I've learned to question official narratives. A flicker of hope crossed Black's gaunt features. You're willing to listen. To hear the truth. I'm willing to hear your version, Harry said carefully, maintaining his defensive position. Whether its truth remains to be seen. Over the next hour, in that dusty classroom, Harry heard a very different account of the events surrounding his parents' deaths. How Peter Pettigrew, not Black, had been the secret keeper and true traitor. How Pettigrew had framed Black for the explosion that killed the Muggles, cutting off his own finger before transforming into his animagus form, a rat, and escaping into the sewers. A rat missing a toe? Harry asked sharply. Like Ron's pet Scabbers? Black's eyes blazed with intensity. Exactly like. I saw his picture in the Daily Prophet when the Weasleys won that contest. Recognized him immediately, Peter, living as a pet, perfectly positioned to hear any news about Voldemort's return. The story was outlandish, but oddly coherent. It explained Black's escape, his focus on getting to Hogwarts, and his lack of interest in harming Harry. I can prove it, Black insisted. Capture the rat. Force him back to human form. One spell will reveal the truth. Harry considered his options. His mystical training had included techniques for detecting deception, and while Black showed signs of mental instability from his years in Azkaban, Harry sensed no dishonesty in his core claim about Pettigrew. I need time, Harry finally said. To verify parts of your story and develop a plan. Bringing this to light properly will be complicated. Time is running out, Black said urgently. Pettigrew knows I'm here. He might run. Then we need to move carefully but quickly, Harry agreed. I'll contact you when I have a plan. The Shrieking Shack would be safer than the castle for our next meeting. Black looked both relieved and impressed. You know about the shack. I know more than people expect, Harry said with a hint of a smile. It's kind of my thing. The plan came together over the next few days. Harry shared Black's story with Ron and Hermione, who reacted with predictable shock but quickly rallied to help verify details. Hermione researched the Fidelius charm and historical accounts of the Potter's protection, while Ron reluctantly agreed to monitor Scabbers more closely without arousing suspicion. If he is Pettigrew, we need to be careful, Harry cautioned. He survived this long by being paranoid and resourceful. They also brought Lupin into their confidence, a decision that proved invaluable when he confirmed critical aspects of Black's story, including the fact that James Potter, Black, and Pettigrew had all become animagi to accompany Lupin during his werewolf transformations. I've had my doubts for years, Lupin admitted. But without evidence, questioning the official narrative would have only raised suspicions about my own loyalty. The opportunity to act came sooner than expected. During a Hogsmeade weekend, Ron discovered Scabbers missing, with apparent evidence that Crookshanks, Hermione's cat, had finally caught him. Blood on my sheets. Ron reported, genuinely distressed. And ginger cat hairs. Or a clever misdirection, Harry suggested. If Scabbers is Pettigrew, he might have faked his death and escaped to avoid capture. A check of the Marauders' map, a magical document Lupin had helped them recover, showing everyone's location within Hogwarts, confirmed their suspicions. There was no trace of Peter Pettigrew in the castle. He's running, Lupin said grimly. Which means we need to accelerate our timeline. That evening, using the map to avoid detection, Harry, Ron, and Hermione slipped out to the Shrieking Shack with Lupin. Black was waiting for them, looking even more haggard but with eyes bright with hope at seeing his old friend. The reunion between Black and Lupin was emotional, 12 years of misunderstanding and separation bridged in moments of explanation and forgiveness. "We need to find Peter," Black said once they'd settled. "Before he gets too far." Harry consulted the map again, scanning carefully. "Wait, there he is." Moving along the edge of the Forbidden Forest. They hurried from the shack, following the map's guidance toward a small dot labeled Peter Pettigrew. As they approached the forest's edge, Harry felt Wong's amulet grow cold against his chest. They were nearing one of the areas of dimensional instability. "Careful," he warned the others. "This area has dimensional weaknesses. Stay close together." They spotted movement ahead, a rat scurrying through the underbrush. Lupin and Black moved with surprising coordination, casting containment spells that cut off Pettigrew's escape routes. Cornered, the rat transformed, revealing a short, balding man with pointed features and watery eyes. His right hand was missing a finger. "Remus. Sirius. My old friends." Pettigrew squeaked, his eyes darting frantically for escape routes. "Save it, Peter," Black growled. "We know what you did." What followed was a pathetic display of excuses and blame-shifting as Pettigrew tried to maintain his innocence. But under coordinated questioning from Lupin and Black, his story quickly unraveled. "You don't understand," Pettigrew wailed. "The Dark Lord, you have no idea the weapons he possesses." "So you betrayed your friends out of cowardice," Lupin said coldly. "What would you have done?" Pettigrew challenged. "Died rather than betray my friends," Black replied without hesitation. As the confrontation intensified, Harry felt Wong's amulet grow painfully cold. The dimensional boundary was reacting to the concentrated magical energy of their emotions and spells. Looking around, he saw reality beginning to ripple at the edges of his vision. "We need to move," he warned. "This area is becoming unstable." But it was too late. Pettigrew, sensing an opportunity in their momentary distraction, made a desperate move. He cast a blasting curse, not at them, but at the ground where the dimensional weakness was strongest. The effect was catastrophic. The curse, interacting with the weakened boundary, created a tear in reality. Swirling energy erupted from the gap, bathing the clearing in eerie, shifting light. "Nobody move!" Harry shouted, already weaving mystical gestures to contain the breach. But Pettigrew had other ideas. Transforming back into a rat, he scurried toward the dimensional tear. Black, reacting instinctively, lunged to stop him. "No. You're not escaping." "Sirius, don't." Harry called, but too late. Black and Pettigrew tumbled together into the swirling energy of the dimensional breach. There was a flash of light, and both disappeared. The tear began to expand, reality fracturing around its edges. Harry felt the magical currents pulling at him, trying to drag him and the others into the breach. "Hermione, Ron, get back," he ordered, stepping forward. Drawing on both his magical traditions simultaneously, he began the complex process of sealing the tear. With his wand, he cast stabilizing charms Strange had modified for dimensional work. With his free hand, he traced mystical symbols that anchored reality around the breach. The combination was powerful but draining, he could feel his magical reserves depleting rapidly. "Lupin, I need your help," Harry called. "Cast a containment charm, the strongest you know, while I work on closing the tear." Lupin complied, his wand worked precise despite the chaos. Together, they managed to halt the breach's expansion, but sealing it completely proved more challenging than Harry anticipated. "I can't hold it much longer," Harry warned, sweat beading on his forehead as he maintained the complex magical integration. "Harry," Hermione called urgently from behind him. "The amulet, use it as a focal point." "Of course." Wong's amulet was designed specifically for dimensional work. Harry grasped it with his free hand, channeling his combined magical energies through the mystical artifact. The amulet glowed with increasing brightness, its symbols aligning with the patterns Harry was creating around the breach. With a final surge of power, Harry pushed both types of magic through the amulet. The tear contracted rapidly, reality knitting back together until only a small point of light remained, which winked out with a sound like distant thunder. Harry collapsed to his knees, magically exhausted. Lupin was beside him immediately, supporting him. "That was extraordinary magic," the professor said quietly. "But Sirius?" Harry began, looking at the spot where the breach had been. "Gone," Lupin confirmed grimly. "Along with Pettigrew." "Where?" Ron asked, helping Hermione forward. "Where did they go?" Harry shook his head. "I don't know exactly. That breach wasn't controlled, it could have connected to any number of dimensional spaces. They could be anywhere. Can we get them back?" Hermione asked. "Maybe," Harry said, not wanting to extinguish hope entirely. "But it would require pinpointing exactly where they went, and that's complicated." They made their way back to the castle, a somber group. Their attempt to clear Sirius had ended with both him and the evidence of his innocence disappearing into an unknown dimension. The following days were filled with intense research and consultation. Harry communicated with Strange, explaining what had happened and seeking guidance on locating Black and Pettigrew. "Tracking someone through an uncontrolled dimensional breach is extremely difficult," Strange explained. "But not impossible. The breach would have left trace energies that might be used to determine its destination." With Dumbledore's assistance, now fully informed about Sirius's likely innocence, they gathered trace magical signatures from the forest clearing. These were sent to Strange for analysis at the Sanctum, where more advanced mystical instruments could interpret the dimensional coordinates. Meanwhile, news of Sirius Black's disappearance circulated through the wizarding community. The Ministry, with no body and no explanation, maintained that he was still at large and dangerous. The Dementors remained at Hogwarts, though they were kept at an even greater distance from the castle grounds. 2 weeks after the incident, Strange contacted Harry with news. "We've identified the dimensional pocket where Black and Pettigrew likely emerged," he reported. "It's a liminal space, a sort of waiting area between more stable dimensions. If they remained there, we might be able to retrieve them." "And if they didn't?" Harry asked, already guessing the answer. "Then they could be anywhere in a multiverse of possibilities," Strange admitted. "But let's focus on the most probable outcome first." A rescue mission was planned for the following weekend. Strange would return to Hogwarts and, with Harry's assistance, open a controlled portal to the liminal dimension. Lupin would accompany them, both for his connection to Black and his combat experience if Pettigrew proved hostile. The day before the planned rescue, however, disaster struck from an unexpected quarter. The Daily Prophet's headline screamed, "Ministry accelerates Dementor deployment following Black sighting." "This is bad," Hermione said, reading the article aloud to Harry and Ron. "They're doubling the Dementor presence around Hogwarts and authorizing them to perform the kiss immediately if Black is found." "But why now?" Ron wondered. "Black vanished weeks ago. Someone reported seeing him," Harry said grimly, pointing to a paragraph halfway through the article. "In Hogsmeade, last night. Which is impossible unless he found his way back," Hermione finished. "Or someone is lying to justify increasing the Dementor presence." Harry touched Wong's amulet, which had grown steadily colder over the past day. "The dimensional disturbances are intensifying again. This increased Dementor activity could be catastrophic for the barriers we've been trying to stabilize." They needed to accelerate their plans. Using the communication stone, Harry contacted Strange immediately, explaining the new development. "This changes things," Strange agreed. "I'm coming tonight instead of tomorrow. Be ready." Strange arrived as promised, portal opening directly into the room of requirement, which they'd secured for the operation. Lupin was already waiting, looking more haggard than usual with the full moon approaching. "The Dementors are gathering," he reported. "I can sense them, more than before, forming a perimeter around the entire grounds. Their timing is suspiciously convenient, Strange noted, preparing the artifacts he'd brought for the dimensional working. Almost as if someone wants to destabilize the boundaries we've been reinforcing. You think the Dementors are being manipulated? Harry asked. Not the Dementors themselves, Strange clarified. But whoever falsely reported seeing black may understand the effect more Dementors would have on our dimensional protections. The rescue plan was necessarily complex. Strange would open a portal to the liminal dimension, while Harry maintained a stabilizing field to prevent any unwanted expansion. Lupin would enter with Strange to search for Black, with Harry remaining at the portal to ensure their return path remained secure. As they made final preparations, Harry felt Wong's amulet grow suddenly ice-cold. At the same moment, the castle shuddered slightly, as if struck by something massive. "That's not good," Strange murmured, his eyes unfocused as he extended his mystical senses. "The Dementors, they're attacking the castle's boundaries en masse." Harry reached out with his own senses, confirming Strange's assessment. The dimensional barriers are cracking under the strain. Multiple weak points are becoming active breaches. "We need to abort the rescue," Lupin said reluctantly. "The castle has to be our priority." "Wait," Harry said, an idea forming. "What if this is connected? The increased Dementor activity, the dimensional weaknesses, what if Pettigrew engineered his own return and is behind all of it? To what end?" Strange asked, though his expression suggested he was already considering the possibility. "Chaos," Harry said simply. "Distraction. Or maybe something worse, access to power from other dimensions, like you originally theorized." They had no time to debate further. A second, stronger tremor shook the castle, and Harry's amulet flared with heat rather than cold, a warning of imminent breach. "The main weakness point is shifting," Harry reported, interpreting the amulet signal. "Moving toward the Great Hall, where most of the school would be gathering for dinner." The realization struck them simultaneously. "It's a trap," Strange stated flatly. "Or an attack. Either way, we need to move now." They raced through the corridors, encountering students and staff rushing in confused patterns as the castle continued to shake intermittently. McGonagall was directing prefects to lead students to their common rooms, but Harry could tell from the magical fluctuations that this might be the worst possible approach. "Professor," he called. "Don't separate them, the Great Hall is safer. The dimensional breaches are forming along the corridors to the dormitories." McGonagall, to her credit, didn't question him. "Prefects. New direction, everyone to the Great Hall immediately. Stay together." They arrived at the Great Hall to find Dumbledore already there, standing in the center of the room with his wand raised, complex patterns of magic surrounding him as he reinforced the castle's internal protections. Strange moved immediately to join him, adding mystical reinforcements to Dumbledore's wizarding wards. "The Dementors have gone rogue," he reported. "Attacking the castle's boundaries rather than patrolling them." "Not rogue," came a voice from the entrance. "Just following new instructions." Harry turned to see Professor Quirrell standing in the doorway, Quirinus Quirrell, who should have been dead for over 2 years. "That's not possible," Harry breathed, instinctively dropping into a defensive stance. "Many things are possible when one understands the nature of dimensional boundaries," Quirrell replied, his voice lacking its former stutter. "Or perhaps I'm not Quirrell at all, but something that found his form, convenient to borrow." Strange and Dumbledore both turned their attention to the newcomer, maintaining their protective spells around the hall while assessing this new threat. "You're from the liminal dimension," Strange deduced. "Where Black and Pettigrew went." "Very good, Sorcerer Supreme," Not Quirrell smiled. "Though I've been working on this plan much longer than that. The rat's arrival was merely convenient timing." Harry studied the figure carefully, extending his mystical senses. This wasn't Quirrell resurrected, nor was it Voldemort possessing his form again. This was something else, a dimensional entity wearing Quirrell's appearance like a costume. "What do you want?" Dumbledore asked directly. What any imprisoned entity wants, Headmaster. Freedom. A way out. Your world has such delicious magical energy, and your wizards have been so obligingly weakening the barriers with their Dementor experiments for decades. As if on cue, the castle shook again, more violently. Through the great hall's windows, Harry could see Dementors swarming outside, pressing against invisible barriers that flickered with each impact. "Harry," Strange called without taking his eyes off the entity. "The stabilization pattern we practiced, implemented around the hall." Harry complied immediately, drawing his wand with his right hand while his left traced complex mystical patterns. Golden energy flowed from his gestures, forming a lattice that overlaid and reinforced the protection Strange and Dumbledore were maintaining. The entity wearing Quirrell's form watched with interest. Fascinating. A child wielding both traditions. That's unexpected. More students poured into the Great Hall, herded by teachers who positioned themselves protectively around the perimeter. McGonagall, Flitwick, and the others began adding their own magical protections, following Dumbledore's lead. "You haven't answered the question," Strange pressed. "What specifically do you want here?" "Currently, to prevent you from sealing the breaches my associates are creating," Not Quirrell replied casually. "Long term. To establish a permanent gateway between dimensions. Your world has so much untapped potential, magical energy that simply begs to be harvested. That would destabilize our entire reality," Strange stated flatly. "A regrettable side effect," the entity shrugged. "But hardly my concern." The situation was deteriorating rapidly. Harry could feel multiple dimensional breaches forming throughout the castle, straining against the protections they'd established. The entity was stalling, keeping them occupied while its associates worked. Harry caught Hermione's eye across the hall, where she and Ron had positioned themselves with other Gryffindors. She nodded slightly, understanding passing between them without words, they needed a coordinated response. Hermione began quietly organizing the DA members, the defense study group Harry had formed earlier that year to teach basic protective magic to interested students. Ron, meanwhile, was subtly positioning them in a pattern Harry recognized, a magical amplification formation Wong had taught them. Harry returned his attention to the standoff, where Strange, Dumbledore, and the entity were still exchanging words. But now he noticed something else. Draco Malfoy, of all people, was mirroring Hermione's actions with the Slytherins, arranging them in a complementary formation. When Malfoy caught Harry's questioning glance, he gave a small, tight nod. Their conversation in the forest had apparently made more impact than Harry realized. Now they needed a catalyst, something to unify these separate elements into a coherent magical response. An idea formed in Harry's mind, drawing on both his traditions. "Strange," he called, not taking his eyes off the entity. "The bands of Cyttorak, modified with Protego principles." Strange's eyebrows rose slightly, but he understood immediately. "Dumbledore, if you would provide the underlying stability?" The headmaster nodded, seeming to grasp their intention despite the unfamiliar terminology. The entity in Quirrell's form sensed their planning. "Whatever you're attempting won't work. The breaches are too numerous, too widely distributed." "Perhaps," Harry acknowledged, slowly shifting position to complete the formation with Strange and Dumbledore. "If we were working alone." At that moment, the castle shook most violently yet. The enchanted ceiling of the great hall flickered, showing not the sky outside but glimpses of something else, swirling chaos, formless entities, a dimension of raw, unstructured energy. "Now!" Harry called. Everything happened at once. Strange and Dumbledore cast simultaneously, their magics intertwining in a display of perfect integration between traditions. Harry channeled both his magical core and dimensional energy through Wong's amulet, creating a bridge between their working and the student formations Hermione, Ron, and Malfoy had organized. The students, following the crash course in magical cooperation Harry had been teaching them, raised their wands in unison. Even those who didn't understand the specifics followed their classmates' lead, contributing their magical energy to the collective working. The result was extraordinary. A wave of combined magical energy, wizarding and mystical, adult and student, spanning all houses, surged outward from the Great Hall. Where traditional spells might have failed against dimensional breaches, this hybrid magic flowed into the castle's very stones, reinforcing its inherent protections while addressing the specific weaknesses the entity had exploited. The entity screamed, a sound no human throat could produce. Quirrell's borrowed form began to shimmer and distort. "This isn't over," it howled. "The boundaries are weakening throughout your world. What comes next will make this look like a child's game." With a final, inhuman shriek, the entity dissolved, Quirrell's form collapsing into dust that scattered across the floor. Simultaneously, the pressure against the castle's boundaries ceased. The Dementors outside withdrew, fleeing from the combined magical surge. The immediate crisis had passed, but Harry knew the entity's warning wasn't empty threat. This had been just one attempt of what might be many. "Everyone stay calm," Dumbledore's voice carried through the hall. "The danger has passed for now. Prefects, please organize your houses. You will remain here tonight while we secure the castle." As students began arranging themselves by house, creating makeshift sleeping areas with conjured sleeping bags, Harry joined Strange and Dumbledore near the teacher's table. "That was remarkable magic, Harry," Dumbledore said quietly. "Organizing the students into a unified magical working while under threat, I don't know many adult wizards who could have managed it." "It wasn't just me," Harry replied honestly. Hermione, Ron, and, surprisingly, Malfoy understood what needed to be done. And the DA members had practiced basic unified spellcasting. Still, the concept of integrating student magical cores into a dimensional ceiling? Strange shook his head, impressed. "That's innovation, not just application." "It wasn't entirely planned," Harry admitted. "I remembered something Walm once said about magical traditions being strongest when they acknowledge and incorporate each other's wisdom. It seemed worth trying. A principle I've long believed in myself," Dumbledore nodded. "Though the wizarding world has been slow to embrace such ideas." Their discussion was interrupted by Professor Lupin's arrival, looking exhausted but determined. "The dimensional breach in the forest has stabilized," he reported. "And I found something, or rather, someone." Behind him, looking gaunt and disoriented but very much alive, stood Sirius Black. "Harry," Sirius croaked, his eyes finding his godson immediately. "You did it. You closed the pathways." "Sirius." Harry moved forward, relief washing over him. "What happened? Where's Pettigrew?" "Gone," Sirius said grimly. "He made a deal with, whatever those things were. Traded information about our world for his own escape to somewhere else. They used him, then discarded him into another dimension when they had what they needed. And kept you in the liminal space as a potential bargaining chip," Strange deduced. "Until your magical surge disrupted their control," Sirius confirmed. "Created a pathway back that I could follow." Dumbledore stepped forward. "Sirius Black. I believe we have much to discuss about your innocence and recent experiences. But perhaps medical attention first." Sirius nodded wearily. "That would be appreciated, Headmaster." As Madame Pomfrey was summoned to examine Sirius, Harry turned back to Strange. "This isn't over, is it?" "No," Strange confirmed. "That entity was right about one thing, the dimensional boundaries are weakening worldwide, not just around Hogwarts. What we experienced today was likely just a preliminary incursion, testing our defenses and responses. Then we need to be ready," Harry said with determination. "And we need to expand what we're doing here, teaching others to recognize and respond to dimensional threats." "Agreed," Strange said, studying Harry with unmistakable pride. "And I believe you've just demonstrated the most effective approach, magical integration. Combining traditions, perspectives, and talents." Harry looked around the great hall, where students from all houses were now settling into their sleeping bags. Despite house rivalries and different magical approaches, they had united when it mattered most. Even Malfoy, despite years of antagonism, had recognized the greater threat and acted accordingly. "It's what makes us stronger," Harry said simply. "Not magical power alone, but understanding how different types of magic can work together." In that moment, as he stood between Strange and Dumbledore, Harry truly felt like a bridge between worlds, not just surviving in both, but actively bringing them together, creating something stronger than either tradition alone could accomplish. The dimensional threats would continue. Voldemort still lurked somewhere, potentially seeking to exploit these new vulnerabilities. The wizarding world faced political challenges around integrating new magical knowledge. But for the first time, Harry felt genuinely prepared to face these challenges, not as the boy who lived or the Sorcerer Supreme's protege, but as himself, Harry Potter, a young wizard who had found strength in standing between worlds and bringing them together when they needed each other most. As the night deepened and plans were made for the days ahead, Harry found himself smiling despite the gravity of the situation. Whatever came next, they would face it with a magic stronger than any single tradition, the magic of integration, understanding, and unity. The convergence of powers had begun. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.